Hello, everybody. I am welcoming tonight to another Love Bomb Chat Jake Bishop, my fellow Canadian, who we were just talking about Vancouver and them not being on fire right now, which is perfect and very exciting because you have very flammable books behind you that I want to stay safe. Also, because I want you and your cat to stay safe as well, because those things are important. But this is your second time on the channel, because we did
I was here for the Winds of Winter.
Yeah. Yes. We still have to reschedule the Watchers on the Wall chat. Remind me that we should do that at the end of this because I have completely forgotten. But I always like to start off my chats with asking people what is something that they've been reading or watching recently that they have been loving, or what is something that you've just finished that you have loved.
Well, I've been going through right now for the last month or so, primarily Tera Ignita by Ada Palmer, and that's been pretty sick.
Okay.
But I've been on a good streak of reading lots of very good books. Quality wise, it's been an uptick from last year for sure.
That's good.
Which the year before was a bit of a down year, where if you look at my top 10 list, it was these would have been not on the list the previous year, and one would have been 5th in the year before. And then we're doing a little House of the Dragon that's going to end soon. Seeing lots of really bad takes on Twitter, which is annoying because the fan base is just I feel
like you and I are probably on opposite sides for House of the Dragon. I'm so sorry.
Well, you'll dislike it for reasonable reasons, though. Yeah. Anyways, it's just whatever. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I like season 1 more.
I'm the same.
But
I'm very
not
much in the same boat.
Overwhelmingly more. I'm playing the people who are like, there hasn't been any battles since episode 4, and I'm like, hope. I don't know,
that part I'm fine with. I would actually prefer there to be more dialogue and less action. That's what I prefer. And ironically, Battle of the Bastards is one of my favorite episodes of Game of Thrones.
And Rook's Rest was pretty sick.
Right? So I don't mind there being good battle sequences, but I feel like part of what made the original series so good is we had those build-up episodes of all the dialogue and interplay between characters that I like that a lot. So I'm happy with that being the case for anything.
But books-wise, do you know anything about Tera Ignita?
I've never even heard of it, so please tell me about it.
So book 1 is To Like the Lightning. It is a sci-fi series that is pretty insane. Yeah, thank you. There's Jimmy. It's my hint for this is my most viewed video by far, more than all my other videos combined.
Yeah.
It's annoying. Is I tier ranked the Targaryen monarchs. And the comments are so annoing.
I bet they're just vitriolic. Oh my god.
I had to mute. It's the only video. Good. Ryan, don't watch it. It's not that good. I muted the comments. Okay, so House of the Dragons. I muted the comments for that video. It's the only video I've muted the comments for.
Jeez.
They're the worst. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. Jimmy, I hope you're feeling better, by the way. Or feeling better very soon. Hey, Brandon.
Oh yeah, he has to deal with it with Bend the Knee. Oh.
Yeah, well, he deals with it with all of his podcasts. Yeah, it's all week long on Bend the Knee. It's brutal, and I know his Lost in Roshar also gets comments, and then you feel like that. I'm sorry. I hope you don't have COVID or something. I know it's going around.
I think.
But yeah, go back to this book. Tell me about this book because I'm getting
So it is stylistically, it's one of the. It's a series that people find relatively challenging. Mm-hmm. I'd been told some people are like, oh, it's I've read Malazan and Book of the New Sun, and this was the most challenging. I personally find it less challenging than Book of the New Sun, and probably a little bit less challenging than Malazan. I actually think it's not that hard to follow scene by scene. Mm-hmm. It is set in the 2400s, so 300 years in the future. It's written by a narrator though who's completely unhinged. His name is Mike Croft. And he's writing it in the style of at times the 18th century for reasons that are random, but also he'll interact with what he perceives the reader would think, but his perceived reader is from the future. So he'll be like, if you're from now, you're probably thinking this thing that we would never think because we're not from now. But you could be reading this thousands of years in the future. So it's like, all right, I'm actually like 400 years behind you, Mycroft.
Yes. Not
I
yet
have,
even.
and it is, the world building is pretty genius. It's almost basically in the future, the brief TLDR of like the 21st century through the 2450s was that this was called the exponential age because we just kept doing discoveries and shit, and we're just like, let's keep going faster. And then there was a big old world war.
Yeah.
That was called the Church War. And
Makes
everyone
sense.
got very scared of organized religion. So now it's actually like you're allowed to have like religious beliefs, but you have it privately with like your religious therapists, and you're not allowed to like convene with other people and like spread your religious beliefs around.
I like this. I really like this.
And it's really interesting because they don't think this is problematic at all because they've just lived with it all this time. They're just like, this is normal. But then they have some serious wins going on in society. Like, they got 20-hour work weeks. That's cool. Life expectancy is like 130 years. There's been no like wars since the Church War. They're like, we don't do war anymore. All right. And it's about this seriously unhinged narrator recounting tales, and they find like something that appears to be a genuine miracle. And there are problems because there's no religious beliefs, but it's like genuine miracle. Series is Tera Ignita by Ada Palmer. I would say book 1. One second, I could get it. I just need to stop and talk with you and read chat. Whatever. Book 1, I thought like each micro scene was really good. Like I enjoyed almost every scene, but a lot of like the political intrigue was very like obtuse to follow. Like it's not like a Game of Thrones political intrigue. You can mostly follow like what's going on with Ned. Like here are the clear mysteries. Yeah. This is kind of like it's hard to tell what each person is trying to accomplish until like the end of the book kind of like wraps it up, and you're like, oh, that's what's this was going toward. So I still really enjoyed it, but it did have the thing where like I was reading and I was like, that scene was really good. The next scene was really good. Very unhinged, but very good. Where is this going though?
Right.
But then book 2, I was like, oh, that's where it's going. So I loved book 2. And then book 3 was a little bit slower, but was still really good. And then book 4 is pretty genius so far.
Is it, how many books are in this series? So you're on the last book.
I am on the last book, which is the most this is what's a lie about the last book. All 4 books look like reasonable length. This is book 1, which is the second longest, and they look like, pretty similar in length. Maybe book 1's a little longer.
Is book 4 like this?
Book 4, well, yeah, the font is like, it's 584 pages. It's like 300,000 words.
Oh, jeez.
The previous books are actually, they're like 100 and something thousand. Like the first 3 are normal. Like
I get really irritated when series do that. Like I get sometimes why, but I have an expectation, and it's like I'm expecting it to be a certain length. I know I can get through it in a certain amount of time and can devote that to it. And then if it comes out of left field and it's 3 times its normal length, I'm like, guys, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, and the mean thing is it doesn't physically look bigger. Like at least with Farseer, if I look at Farseer, I'm like, there's my copy of Assassin's Apprentice. It's skinny. There's my copy of Royal Assassin. It's a little thicker. Yeah. There's my copy of Assassin's Quest. That's a thick book. Yeah. This one's like, oh yeah, they're all the same length. And then it's like, no, why is this font so small? So that's deception. It's all a lie. But it's very, very good. And if you ever want to feel like your resume is inadequate, you can look at Ada Palmer's because apparently she's very smart.
Yep. I haven't read a ton of sci-fi, honestly. It's something that I do want to start giving a little bit more effort to, because I feel like the only really sci-fi books I've read are more sci-fantasy than anything else. So did Red Rising this year. I still have Lightbringer to go. And then I just read Will of the Many, which I would definitely put under sci-fantasy. I don't know if other people would, but I'm like, I think it's sci-fantasy.
Yeah. A lot of my favorite sci-fi books are actually just epic fantasies in space.
Right?
Like Sun Eater is an epic fantasy series that happens to take place in space.
Yeah.
Dune is kind of a epic fantasy book that is a little sci-fi, but takes place in space.
Evie was saying that yesterday to me, actually.
Yeah. Red Rising, epic fantasy series, takes place in space.
Yeah.
In terms of vibe, like some of them, it's like they literally have magic and are literally epic fantasies. Which, I mean, this is allegedly, like, the narrator is crazy, so you never know what's real. But allegedly, this is a fantasy book. He's like, miracle.
Right.
So I'm kind of on the same thing. Although technically, I have read, like, this has been a year of sci-fi. I've read basically as much sci-fi as I have fantasy this year, which is very strange for me.
That's awesome.
Like, if you go back to like 2020, I was like 95% fantasy, 5% sci-fi.
Okay.
The main reason is because I've read like 10 Vorkoskin novels. So that adds up quickly, because that's like a quarter of the books I've read.
Sure. So what compelled the shift, do you feel like? Is it just saying
I just kept running into books that I was like, that sounds interesting, and it was sci-fi. I did not sit down and go like, hey, I want to write.
Yeah.
I want to read a sci-fi book. I was just like, hey, people are really liking this Tera Ignita thing. Let's try.
Sure.
So yeah, it was accidental.
Are you a TBR planner, or are you kind of more of a mood reader?
I'm a TBR planner.
Are you? Okay.
But I'm a mood reader with rereads.
Okay.
I used to try and plan both. Now I'm like, I feel like rereading this, and I just do.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I plan ish. Like, I kind of have them in clusters where I'm like, after this group of series, this is going to be like the next group of series. Like the next few series that are like, I'm like, these are the ones that I'm going to consider starting, is going to be like Gormenghast. It's like Titus Grown. Hi, Evie. What's up? Prince of Nothing. Hi, Jimmy. What's up? Warlord Chronicles. Hi, Laura. What's up?
Yeah!
Something else.
So
and then I went one that like has been on my TBR for a long time. There's some books that have been on my TBR for a long time that I just like keep pushing back because I've been hyped on them. I feel like I should include one. Maybe like Canius.
I would read that with you because I haven't read it yet. And Josh got me book 1 for Christmas. So let me know when you want to do that, and I will do that with you. Because
there's Evie.
That'll motivate me. Yeah, exactly.
She was falling asleep. She was like about to fall asleep, and then she was going, guys. She was like, let's go.
I know. Basically, it's like that. And anytime Simon Jimenez is mentioned, Evie somewhere gets this like electric shock that goes through her brain, and she jolts up somewhere.
She just noticed that she can see spear cuts through water on my bookshelf, and she's like, oh, this is a good stream.
We just read that last month for book club, and it was a very interesting read. Ended up liking it probably more than I thought I would. Just a really strange experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very unique book. There's some books where you can be like, say one thing for them. The author took risks, like Tera Ignita. Like, you can say whatever you want, some things about Tera Ignita and Ada Palmer's like the story she's constructed. But what you cannot say is that she played it safe.
Ryan, that is the minority opinion. I like Hannah's beats Will of the Many by miles and miles.
I feel like all the fans of Islington, I don't know how to pronounce that name.
So
I've been like,
it is Islington because the audiobook for Will of the Many said Islington. And then I made a video saying apparently it's Islington, even though I thought it was Islington. And Matt from Matt on Books was like, Mike from Mike's Book Review interviewed him and asked him specifically how to say his name. So I went and I watched that interview, and he says Islington. So it's Islington.
Islington. That's pretty definitive.
Yes.
We're gonna say that's a reliable source.
It's reliable. It's from his mouth. So yes.
I feel like all the other Islington fans are like, just read Will of the Many first. And I'm like, no, I've owned this book for too long. There's no shot I'm reading it second. I've promised people that if I don't like The Shadow of What Once Was Lost, I will still read Will of the Many.
Okay. So that was my thing because I had a very poor experience with Malice by John Gwynne, and I still want to read Bloodsworn because it sounds more intriguing to me. But then with James Islington, I was like, Will of the Many seems to be having more positive reviews about it. So I'm going to do the reverse here, and I'm going to read that first, and then I'm going to go back and read like Hannes, because I really enjoyed Will of the Many. So now, even if I don't super love the first book of Lycanis, chances are I'll be willing to push through it in the hopes that it gets better because I think he's a good author. So there's that. That's my mentality of the whole thing. Does it make sense? Not really. But
I think that's fair.
It's fine. It's fine.
Because it's like once you trust an author,
yeah, exactly.
It's easier to like you'll enjoy the other books more. It's like you trust. It's like, okay, this is going somewhere.
Have you had an author where your first book you didn't super fall in love with it, trust them, and then a later book solidified them as a top author for you?
I'd have to think about. I'm going to turn around and look at my bookshelf. It depends on how high of standard we have for not really liking the first one. I was pretty lukewarm on Gardens of the Moon.
Okay.
But also Gardens of the Moon, like I thought there was some stuff in it that was super cool.
Okay.
So it was like I could have trusted that like something was going on.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of authors where like if I'd started them in publication order, that would have happened. Like if I'd started with Elantris, I would have thought that. Let's see.
Where did you start with Sanderson?
The Final Empire was my first Sanderson.
That's where I started too. I did the first 3 Mistborn, then Elantris and Warbreaker were my first 5.
I did the first 3 Mistborn and then Stormlight.
Oh, wow.
Not Stormlight. I had Way of Kings and Words of Rings. Oathbringer wasn't out at the time. So there's not a lot of authors where I've not really liked the first book I've read from them and then like fully changed my mind. There's authors where I've read the first book and liked it and then later books way more. Like Assassin's Apprentice at the time I was much lower on.
Yeah.
I like The Dispossessed a lot more than I like Wizard of Earthsea.
Okay.
That would be Le Guin.
Le Guin, yeah.
Probably others.
Probably.
I don't know.
So where did the fantasy reading start? Do you have a family of readers, or was this just something that you were like, this is my thing?
Yeah, so my mom had the goal of raising readers.
Nice.
And she was reading me Harry Potter. I was Prisoners of Azkaban.
The best one.
And she, being evil and smart, would deliberately, once she started feeling like maybe I could go read it, she would like stop on cliffhangers and be like, "That's it for today. I have to go to sleep."
But
and
smart.
then eventually, I was like, "Give me the book.
Yeah,
I will read it."
That's funny and brilliant.
Then I read Harry Potter. I read all of like Percy Jackson. And then I also a long time ago read like The Inheritance Cycle and a bunch of the other like random middle grade to YA books. And then I kind of wandered aimlessly genre wise for a while and didn't really know what type of book I liked until I read The Final Empire in grade 9.
Okay.
And then I was like, oh,
it's this.
I want more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was genius by your mother. I can. Oh my god, Moose, Matthew, I love your.
It's a tactic I support and endorse.
Yeah,
even though it's an example of when the ends do justify the means.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's a very Slytherin move on your mother's part. Like, well done, her.
Yeah, she would probably also agree that it's a wee bit Slytherin. You know.
Yeah, it's cunning. It's clever.
It is.
Yeah. I'm married to a Slytherin, so I have to give them all their due credit for their positive traits and stuff like that. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Do you know, did you get into Harry Potter? Like, do you have a house type thing?
I liked Harry Potter. I liked Percy Jackson more as a child.
Okay.
Like, I was much more enthusiastic about Percy Jackson.
Yeah.
I liked Harry Potter. I reread them both in 2019 randomly. Okay. And I liked Harry Potter. When I reread them, I was like, oh, I think Harry Potter is better. That's a bit disappointing for my childhood.
Yeah. I reread them in 2019 too. Funnily enough.
But I wasn't like super. I was like, I'd read them. I watched the movies.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you start referencing Harry Potter things, like I'm going to get the reference.
Sure.
But I was not an obsessive fan.
Okay.
My sister was definitely more of the fan at the time.
Is she slightly older than you?
Yes. She's like 2.5 years older than me.
That's probably more so that right age to just hit it, because we were kind of aging with the books as they were coming out, which was really neat. I loved Harry Potter. I still do very, very much.
Last time I read it, I feel it held up reasonably well. It definitely has its
There's a few
janky
things,
elements.
Sure. Yeah.
If you get annoyed, and I do, by lacking internal consistency between novels, there's some things where it's like, wait, don't they have time turners?
Yeah.
Like she'll come up with like clever magical things that are really cool.
Yeah.
And then their use in that novel will be really interesting.
Right.
And then she'll get to the next one and be like, anyway.
They're forgotten. Yeah.
And then it's kind of, there's a weird thing with Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, because I feel like Percy Jackson, I like the protagonist more. Like I like Percy more than I like Harry. And I like the antagonist, redacted due to spoilers, a lot more than I like Voldemort.
Okay.
But then I think like all the supporting cast of Harry Potter is more interesting than all the supporting cast of Percy Jackson.
Okay.
That's my...
I haven't read Percy Jackson yet. It's one that I've been holding off on, that I'm going to read with my kid when she's the right age. So I want to experience that with her, because I feel like most of the other series that she is going to read, I will have already read. And like, I'm really excited to reread them with her, just because it's fun to see that through someone else's eyes for the first time.
That'll be extremely cool. And they'll be like, they're very entertaining.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. But now that Evie's home, she was lukewarm on Terry Pratchett and Adrian Tchaikovsky. That's interesting to me. The Color of Magic is fair, though, to make you be kind of mid on Pratchett, if that's where you're starting, because it's not his strongest book.
Thing is, actually, Pratchett's not a bad example. I've only read 3 Pratchett books, but I was much more lukewarm on... Actually, I have the ultimate example. On reread, I changed my mind, but when I actually read The Fellowship of the Ring, I was pretty lukewarm on it.
Okay.
And then also, I've read Mort, Guards, and Small Gods, and I've just like each progressively like substantially more than the previous one.
I have only read one. I started The Color of Magic, and because my husband got me a couple of Pratchett's for Christmas, and I started reading it, and I was like, I know this is the first book, but I feel like I shouldn't be starting with this one. It almost feels like this isn't the right place to be. So I messaged Alan and I said, my husband also got me Going Postal. So where do I go? And he said, read Going Postal first, which I did. And I had a fun time with. And then I've read Good Omens, which is co-authored by him. But I have Mort on my shelf that I've been wanting to read for months and months and months. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to gear up to do the Death series and books around Halloween, and then maybe do Hogfather around Christmas. But I don't know yet. I want to get back into Discworld. It's just been a hot minute since I've read any of the books. I haven't read them in about a year.
Yeah, I imagine I'll probably go through them slowly over the next like decade.
Right? I mean, we're not getting any new ones. So,
and there's 40 something of them.
I think there's 41 in total.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that you've got such a plethora to choose from, but Percy Jackson is better. Sounds like a Hufflepuff. Would you classify yourself as a Hufflepuff, Jake?
I don't know. I don't know which house. Give me a sorting hat. I need the sorting hat.
I want to claim you as Ravenclaw just because I feel like we need more. Because really the only one that I know other than myself is Bookborn.
I don't know. I'm cool with Ravenclaw. Yeah.
So we'll take it. We'll make it Ravenclaw. But
I'm probably... Yeah, it probably makes the most sense in terms of like what I value. Like, so I don't say I'm not Slytherin because I'm like, look at me, I'm a great person. I don't value like I'm not like, I want to go be famous and like great and leave this crazy legacy. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Well, sure, I'll say I'm a Ravenclaw if it makes you happy.
Yeah.
What's my godly parent? That's not how that works. That's not a personality trait. That's like neither of them. That's not the same thing. It doesn't work like that.
Oh my gosh. Yes, Evie, you would definitely be a Hufflepuff. Britton, when I went to Potter World, there were more Hufflepuffs than anybody else, including Gryffindor. You guys are the strong majority, I feel like. Brian says he'll send you a sorting hat, so that's always nice. Thank you,
I feel like the Hufflepuff ideal of don't be a dick actually just
it works.
Rings pretty true.
It does, honestly. Like, that's the whole thing. We joke about it in my house because family member, my family loves Harry Potter. Like, Josh kind of married into a Harry Potter loving family, and I've made him read books and do all of the tests and all that fun stuff. I am the only non-Slytherin in our whole family. So I am just like constantly trying to recruit people to Ravenclaw. I'm like, come, we'll welcome all of you. But really, I'm like, if I was another house, it would
How do the Slytherins feel about the fact that the author of this
I
thing
know.
they love just like clearly hates them?
I know, right?
Like,
Because
does that not cause some internal turmoil of
I
like
feel
the
like
author clearly thinks that we're bad? Like,
I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because when you go and you look at the books, if you actually just read the characteristics and traits of Slytherin, you're like, those are fine. They're cunning, they're resourceful, they have strong leadership abilities, like great. But then when you read it from Harry's perspective, you're like, they come across really badly in this book.
yeah, like maybe it's just like they started off with someone who was a dick, so he just kept being like, I'm in charge now, and then he kept being
Right.
like all the people who were also dicks. He was like,
Mhm.
yes, you're my people, and then
Mhm.
they created a culture of just everyone being
Dick
annoying.
culture, yes. So I see what is a guy Gabriel K book behind you, and I think it's Lord of Emperors, and
That is Lord of Emperors.
it's a cover I haven't seen before. It's very pretty.
This is, I can confirm canonically that guy Gabriel K really likes this cover
Does
because he
he?
told me when I was like, would you sign these, sir? Because they go like this.
That's
And it's
gorgeous.
immensely satisfying.
Yes, it is. That is really nice. Are those a special edition or are those just like hard to find?
They're just hardcovers. My man Isaac, shout out Isaac if you watch this later, found these in a Value Village.
Get out.
And I was like, can I interest myself in purchasing these from you? So
For all of you non-Canadians, Value Village is basically like Goodwill. But yeah, I think they're slightly better. Oh my gosh, those are how much did those cost you from Value Village?
I forget. Very cheap.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And they're signed now too. They weren't signed when I got them, but they're signed now.
Oh my gosh, I have yet to find decent quality books at a Goodwill, Value Village, anything. Like I have had zero luck with books. I check every single time. There's nothing. So that's a bummer. But how did you start reading K?
Well, let's see. I think who gets the original credit? I think it was Daniel Green's interview with Nicholas Ames piqued my interest. Daniel Green reviewed Tigana, and at the time, I was like, "You're supposed to be continuing Dresden, sir. What's going on?" Rawr. And then, yeah, exactly. Or if you want to get a Halloween costume and you don't want to spend any money,
correct.
Well. And then, like, yeah, there was the Nicholas Ames interview, and there was someone on Discord who named like Trav who'd read Lions and Tigana and really liked it. So it just kind of like went on the TBR. Yeah. And eventually I just got to Tigana and I was like, well, I liked that. And then I did a thing where, you read the first book by an author and you really like it. And you're not going to like instantly go read all their other stuff. But then I put more Gabriel K books.
I did that with Sanderson last year.
For me, it's like, usually if I'm starting an author, I have like, if it's a series, it's different. Yeah. But this was a standalone. I was like, this is on my TBR. I was in the middle of Realm of the Elderlings.
Ooh, like, yeah. You were busy.
I was busy. Yeah. We're occupied. So anyways, I was like, okay, I shall read more books by this man. And I was very scared because I'd read the Petrick reviews. And Petrick was like, Tigana, amazing. Lions of Our Saul, terrible.
What?
Like, yeah. You don't read them. They're not good for your sanity. Man does not like Lions of Our Song.
Who said this?
Petrick.
No.
Yeah, I know. It's backwards. It's wrong. It's bad.
I felt the exact opposite. I DNF Tigana, and Lions is one of my all-time favorites.
I mean, both. That's also wrong, but that's slightly less wrong.
It's so different we'll wrong, but yes.
Anyway, so I was very scared going into Lions because I was like, someone who, I reasonably agreed with Petrick, especially at the time. I think our tastes have diverged slightly since then.
Sure.
But I was very concerned. And then I read like chapter 1 of Lions. And actually I was stuck at an airport because I was in PEI and they'd lost our baggage. And for some reason, they weren't just like, yeah, you know, it's going to arrive tomorrow. You can come pick it up whenever. There was some weird legal or policy thing. Someone had to be at the airport when the plane arrived. So I was like, I got a book. I will chill at the airport, family. Yeah. And I waited at that airport, but I had to wait outside it. So I was reading Lines of Our Song outside this airport. It's very windy.
Where was
I had
this?
My PEI. I had my camping chair. It's a nice day out. And I was like a chapter into Lines of Our Song. And I remember my Discord comment was, how is this already so good? Mm-hmm. I was like, what's going on? Anyway, so then I finished Lines and I was like, I like that even more than Tigana. Which at the time, like now isn't surprising. But in our little sphere at the time, people who knew nothing about Guy Gabriel K were shocked. It's like, oh, you like a non-Tigana Guy Gabriel K book more than Tigana? Is such a thing even possible? I actually think probably the gap is bigger than I thought it was at first, and that I was biased by social perception that Tigana is just the best Guy Gabriel K book. But I was like, I think I like this even more. And then I was like, all right, so I'm going to read them all now. And starting like a couple months later, I read The Summer Tree, and then I read every Guy Gabriel K book a month in publication order.
And where have we landed on our top GGK book? Is it?
I can go from best to worst right now. So my favorite one is Lord of Emperors.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Which on a good day for Lord of Emperors is also just my favorite book. Most days, my favorite book is Assassin's Fate.
Okay.
Final Realm of the Otherwings book.
There's just a side note. I'm really happy it's not a book from A Song of Ice and Fire, because I feel like most of our corner of BookTube, that ends up being most. Well, if it was, it'd be Storm Swords.
Storm Swords is awesome, but no, it's definitely one of Assassin's Fate or Lord of Emperors. Probably like 70% of days it's Assassin's Fate, and like 30% of days it's Lord of Emperors. My second favorite is a Brightness Long Ago. Shad, you have only read Tigana. Shush. You read it 20 years ago and haven't read anything since. Anyway, my second favorite is A Brightness Long Ago, which is this one, which is also his shortest novel.
Josh says the ending for that is probably his favorite ending to a book ever. Well, like best last line in a book.
I think the start and middle is pretty damn good as well. My third favorite is The Lines of Our Song. Then Under Heaven. And then a bit muddled on the order, but the next two is Tigana and A Song for Arbonne. And so then
tried Tigana and A Song for Arbonne. Interesting.
I don't know. I'm confused about them.
Okay.
I might like Tigana more. I might like Arbonne more. Well, I might like one definitively more. I'm just not sure yet.
Okay.
I'll figure it out eventually.
And
then Sailing to Sarantium.
Okay.
Yes, Evie, this isn't all books. And then The Last Light of the Sun, which is the book with like the lowest Goodreads rating, and like all the if you Google Guy Gabriel K books ranked, it's always like last, and I have no idea why. It's awesome. And then I forgot about Under Heaven.
No, you said Under Heaven.
Okay, I said Under Heaven. I didn't forget about Under Heaven. Then River of Stars, All the Seas of the World, Asterisk, Children of Earth and Sky. I liked All the Seas of the World less than Children of Earth and Sky by a fair margin the first time I read it, but I liked it slightly more on reread. Okay. I have not reread Children of Earth and Sky. It's one of like the 5 I haven't reread.
Okay.
It could move up to higher. And then all 3 Fiona Var books, and then Yzma.
Okay. So the Fiona Var ones are near the bottom, and they were the ones that you read relatively at the beginning.
Yeah, they were his first books. They're like classical fantasy.
Sure.
They almost feel like a different author.
Oh, really?
I mean, they have the K-isms, but just like when I think of K, I think of linear history books.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you think how it's like, you know, if you think of George Martin, you're going to be like A Song of Ice and Fire. And it's like, he also wrote sci-fi books, by the way.
Yes, he did.
And a vampire book.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about Fiona Var.
Okay.
People ask when they should read Fiona Var, and I say read Fiona Var when you are 100% sure that your reaction to Fiona Var will not change whether you will read all the other historical books.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So I've only read the 2. I've read Arbonne and Lions, but like I'm in a weird spot because I love Lions so much that I'm like, I don't know if any other of his books is going to top Lions for me, because Lions is a straight 5-star for me. It's perfect. I love, love, love that book. There's a few things throughout the book that I would change just because I feel like that's the case with every book, but I loved everything about that book, as I talked about in our discussion with Joanna and Josh.
I think it's a choice I've seen from people who have read all the K books. It's pretty excellent. I definitely do like Brightness and Lord of Emperors more, but like if you read them all and Lions was your favorite, I wouldn't be like, that's crazy. If someone read them all and like The Wandering Fire was their favorite, I'd be like,
questionable.
Elaborate.
Yes, please.
But like Lions, like I don't need you to elaborate. With Lions.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The thing with that book is, and I try to tell people this without getting spoilery, is that the prologue to that book is so good. It grips you from the very beginning, and not the final chapter of the book, but the second final chapter of the book is so gripping that it's like pretty much from start to finish, that entire thing, where I'm like, I need to know what is happening right now because I'm so invested. And it was so good. I also just love the setting for Lions.
I've read it 3 times now. Twice physically, once on audio.
I've done the audio and I really liked it audio.
The audio was really good. It's Ewan Morton. He's one of my favorite. I haven't done a lot of audio books. I started doing audio rereads in the background at work.
Yep.
He did the first one of the Jim Butcher books, the first Aeronauts Windless book. I think he's an excellent narrator.
He is. I think he did Will of the Many too, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, interesting. He did Song for a Bone as well. I know he didn't do any of the other K books.
Yep.
I've done Tigana on audio, which is Simon Vance. People love Simon Vance. I don't love Simon Vance as much. Shoot me.
So I've done all my K books via audiobook, and I don't mind Simon Vance because he did Augustus, which I really liked his voice for the audiobook. It made sense tonally. I was like, I think this is fine. I don't think that it translated as well to Tigana. I feel like he does better with maybe straight historical fiction, but because Tigana is more fantastical, I would say, than his other books that I had read, which leaned more into historical fantasy more than just fantasy. It wasn't doing it for me. But I also don't know if it's because in my mind, I tend to associate narrators with authors, kind of how I do with Stephen Pacey with Abercrombie or Kramer with Sanderson. And in my mind, I was like, well, Ewan does GGK books. And then I started listening. I was like, no, this isn't it.
Yeah. The first time I listened to the samples, I was just like, oh, I like the sample for Lions a lot more. I guess the Silmarillion was edited by GGK to some account. I don't know if that counts, but
yes,
that would have.
Yes.
But yeah, Simon Vance, he's very technically, like his dialogue is all the voices are different. And I'm like, there's no errors here. I just like for the descriptive writings, I just don't like his voice for case prose. I'm sorry, Simon Vance. Please don't send your assassins after me.
GGK's titles are so good. Like Josh and I get into this conversation occasionally where we're like, what's your favorite title of a book? Or what do you think is a really great title for a book? Like you don't even have to like the book itself or you haven't to have read it. But so many GGK titles are amazing. Like I love All the Seas of the World as a title.
That's a really good title. That's one of his best. He did have his thing at the start where he just named all of them after places. Like all 3 that you've read. And then Sailing to Sarantium. Yep. And then he got to then he was like, damn it, it's a second in a duology. I can't name it after the same place.
Right.
So he was like, screw it, Lord of Emperors.
Right.
And then he was like, wait, I can do names that aren't named after a place. And that opened an entire new world to him. Then he was like, The Last Light of the Sun, Under Heaven, River of Stars. And it was a big moment for him when he realized
it was kind of eye-opening. But he's got so many great titles that every year when I buy Josh GGK books for Christmas, I'm like, just the title of this is beautiful. And I look at some of the other stuff on my shelf and I'm like, I liked this book, but the title is garbage compared to GGK.
Oh, Robin Hobb titles. They hurt me. Oh, this car alarm going in the background. That's going to be interesting. Do you want to go on a monologue while this car alarm goes off?
I mean, I could if you really
What have you heard about Robin Hobb and what are your plans in starting? Actually, which Robin Hobb? Have you read?
I haven't read Hobb yet. So this is something that's pretty well discussed by me on my channel. If you are in the chat right now and you follow my channel pretty regularly, I am really anxious about starting Hobb specifically because
I remember this.
I don't do well with animal stuff. People know this. Like I freak out about animal things, and I assume that I will like her very much stylistically in the way that she writes, because so many people have told me in terms of character work, she's very akin to Abercrombie, that they're very character driven and character focused. And Abercrombie's my favorite author. So that for me would probably work. At least I'm hoping it does. And I'm interested in the world because I love a well fleshed out and expansive world. And obviously she's got like 17 books, I think, in Farseer.
16, a novella, and a couple short stories.
So I definitely do want to give it a go. I'm just trying to be very meticulous as to when I read those books, because I do not want to emotionally destroy myself while reading.
You're gonna be okay.
Am
It'll
I?
be fine.
Am
You'll
I?
be fine. All right. You have read lots of books with emotionally damaging things in them, and you're
Yes,
okay.
but it's people usually, and I don't care. But the second it's a dog, I'm like, I care very, very much. So I don't know.
You'll be fine.
I think so.
I mean, you very temporarily won't be fine, but then you'll be fine.
Exactly. I'm amping it up more. I know that. I have yet to experience Fitz. That's true. I had bought the first book for Josh last year, and he read it and was kind of mid on it. He didn't really love the ending, but he said that he would read more of her stuff just to see if he felt like it was a good fit for him / not a good fit for him. But the thing that I find really interesting about her that I've heard from a lot of different people is that some people who love her really dislike some of the trilogies within Farseer. And I'm like, oh, this is really fascinating to me that like you'll still go back and you'll read the others, even though you've had a fairly poor negative experience with one
they're
part of it.
So consistently slow paced that if you just end up not interested in like the characters, you just like can't enjoy it. Like there's some things where you're like the characters, whatever, but like this is fun. Like if you're not really hooked on the characters, it's just like, so what's happening? But Assassin's Apprentice is kind of weird. So I had a bit of a weird experience reading Hob because I read Assassin's Apprentice. I remember I gave it like a 7.4 out of 10. I remember this, which was egregious, but that's okay.
You've learned.
And on my review, I was like, I don't know what to think about this. And after Farseer, I love Royal Assassin. And then Assassin's Quest was like similar to Assassin's Apprentice, where I was like, Assassin's Quest has some of probably my like favorite scenes in the Farseer trilogy. Also, like, I am the king of this book isn't too long. You're just a hater. Assassin's Quest is too long. Like, do you know like the drumming movie? I'm forgetting its title, but the guy shouts like, "Are you rushing or are you dragging?" It's like Robin Hobb was doing both while writing Assassin's Quest. That dude was yelling at Robin Hobb, "Are you rushing? Are you dragging?" And then I read a bunch of other stuff, and then I read Ship of Magic, and it was my favorite book of all time when I read it.
There you go.
And yes, I know it's a quest, Evie. People are still allowed to be bored.
Yes, they are.
Calling the book Assassin's Quest does not mean that people's boredom is illegitimate. Like, it's fine. So I'm now in the position where, like, I reread Ship of Magic, and I have to filter how much I like that book because it will get people overhyped and they won't like it as much as me.
That's fair.
If I didn't filter myself, this is what it would be like 30 pages into my reread of Ship of Magic, and probably while I was reading it the first time because it became my first book ever, the thought in my head was, it's so obvious this is better than everything else. How do people not see it? I don't get it. Like, it's so clearly overwhelmingly better than everything else. That's
or hers, like her.
No, just like ever, just generally. When I reread Ship of Magic, I was like, Hob is so obviously better than everyone else. I can't say that, like, that probably will not be your experience. That will probably not be most people's experience.
Sure.
But when I read the best Hob books, that's what's going on in my head. I'm just like, I don't get how she's not just like so obviously better than like everyone else. And I've read her both times. I've read Ship of Magic both times after reading some quality books because I reread it this time. I just finished rereading A Game of Thrones. And the first time, I just finished The Crippled God. Just finished the end of Malazan. And both times, I was still like, this is so obviously better. Like, it's not even close. Like, get out of here. So
that's interesting.
So she's my favorite author. And that aspect of when I read her favorite books, she has some books that I like. I think she's less consistent than Gabriel K. I say that. She has like 10 books that would be like my second favorite guy.
Yeah.
So
I think that's normal though. Like you can have a favorite author, but not every single book of theirs is going to hit for you.
She so clearly has more flaws. Like Gabriel is kind of good at everything in his good books. Hob, I'm like the pacing, like it's a struggle. At times. And there's so many books where I'm like, this is clearly obviously a flop. But at the end of the day, it's just like the strengths for me are so overwhelming that it's like, you know, what's your favorite series? The answer is Realm of the Otherlings easily.
What are you saying unless it's Joe Abercrombie? I'm very confused. Please elaborate here. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. Like I love Joe Abercrombie very, 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 very much, but I don't love every single one of his books. I've enjoyed every single one of his books, but I wouldn't say that like, oh, that one would be my second favorite of all time type thing. And there's definitely faults and flaws that I can point out in them, but I would still say I recommend them to everybody because I think everyone should read them because I love them.
I don't recommend Hop to everyone. They're too slow paced. They're too for the non-readers. By the way, Derry had no comments for a bit there. I'm wondering if she went unconscious when I was like, she's so clearly better than everyone else. And Derry was just like, this is what we want to hear in our live chats.
That's fair.
Hello, Kyle.
Hello, Kyle. Yes. So, I mean, that's fair. Like, I will give people a warning with Abercrombie where I'm like, listen, if you are willing to trust someone to take you on a very meandering journey, at least in the first 3 books, and get to know people on a very intimate level, then this might be a good series for you. If you are not willing to take said risks, then probably not for you. But I still encourage you to try it just to see if you like it, because I feel like it can be interesting for that type of writing and reading experience where before reading Abercrombie, I was very much a plot-driven reader. And I feel since reading him, I am very much a character-driven reader. And I think that takes that one author to kind of switch your frame of reference if that is going to happen for you. So it could be that Hob is that for a lot of people, and maybe from your suggestions.
Maybe. By the way, Mitch, this is actually Mitch has a true story up here allegedly, but it's not a true story because I didn't slap the copy of Crime and Punishment. I slapped the professor, causing them to drop their copy of Crime and Punishment, and then I threw Ship of Magic at them. But it was in a case that prevented it from being damaged, so it was fine. I would never lie on the internet.
Was this at university?
No, I would never lie on the internet.
Never.
Me and Mitch, he saw it happen because he lives also in BC. So
that
means we all know each other, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, BC is like this big, so everyone's in the same place at the same time. That's kind of how it is. Canada is just one really small place.
We all know each other.
All 12 of us know each other.
I'm cheering for all my buddies at the Olympics.
I have been doing the same thing. Do you watch the Olympics? Because I get really excited for the Olympics.
Did I? I would never watch the Olympics while I'm working. No, it's never happened.
Never ever happened. So
for the record, but there are all these events that took place while I was working, and I have watched them.
So today during the 10,000 meter run, I was so hyped. I don't know if you watched that one.
I watched the end where I watched like the very end, and it was very.
It was so upsetting.
I had it going on in the background, but I was just like, I was actually working. In fairness, but it was like 13 laps left, and I was like, we'll pay attention to this later. And then I was like, 1 lap left.
Yeah, I was screaming at my television, and my 2-year-old got really hyped and excited, and I was like, you should be cheering for them. They're Canadian. You're half Canadian. This is very exciting. And then, of course, it didn't pan out. So, yep, it was a bummer. Real bummer. But I love the Olympics, so it's been fun to have stuff on during the day. Do you have a preferred event that you like to watch / not watch while at work?
I don't know. I mean, the Winter Olympics has hockey.
It does.
So like, I don't know. I'm on team. This is my Olympics take. I know it's not an event, but I've been asking for this for years, and I stand by it. And that's that every event where it's safe should have a normal person for scale.
I know.
Like,
I feel that way with the swimming.
Like just all of them. Just because, like, there are people who are like, I mean, how much? With a year of hard training. I've now had this argument twice in the last week that with a year of hard training, they could make some random events on the Olympics. Because it's just like, this event is silly. And I'm like, no, with a year of hard, there are people who have trained their entire life for this with more dedication than you have ever had for anything. And they still completely failed and didn't come close.
Yeah.
None of you.
Mm-hmm.
None of you have a chance at any of the events.
Yep.
100%. Unless one of you is actually at the Olympics watching this, which is incredible because it's not that many of you here. But none of you.
Yeah, I was a competitive swimmer for a long, long time. And I was saying yesterday with the 50-meter free with the men, I was like, I would pay really good money to have a ninth lane where we had a regular swimmer because it's just this tide that goes by in the pool and you don't even see people. It's just splashing water because it goes by so quickly. It's so fun. I loved it. But yeah,
it would be amazing. And for some things you don't need it. For safety, you don't need it for the gymnastics floor. Like I see Simone Biles, I'm like, I can't do that. No one I know can do that.
Right? Cool. Yeah.
But people watch running. It's like, well, I can run. I can swim. I'm much slower than them. How much slower am I? Right? How much faster can they really be?
I know. Josh and I were actually joking about this while watching the 10,000 meter because Josh is a runner. I am not. And he was like, I feel like because they've paced themselves to go substantially slower for the first few laps, he's like, I could maybe keep pace for one lap and then I would be done forever. That would be it. And I was like, I wouldn't even keep pace for a quarter of a lap.
There was a thing people did. They tried to break the marathon record as a team. Mm-hmm. So they had 8 people and they all took turns running the 400 meter as fast as they could at the record marathon pace. And they did end up succeeding, but they had to call in other people because they were getting so tired. Mm-hmm. They're probably faster than me though, because they do track things. Mm-hmm. I'm not a particularly good runner, so I literally don't think I could run one lap at the record marathon pace. I think it was a minute 6 and 6 seconds per 400 meters. Which anyway, if any of you out there are close to a 400 meter track, you can go try and run it in a minute and 6 seconds. And that's not outrageously fast. Yeah. But you run it, and you're like, geez, I had to run pretty fast.
Yeah, I'm basically a human bullet.
I had to sprint for that. And then it's okay, now picture doing this. How many laps is 50 kilometers?
Right.
A lot of laps.
Yeah.
Just keep doing that for hours.
No.
Anyway.
You couldn't pay me to do it. Could not pay me. No. So other than Hob and K, would you have a third to kind of round out your fantasy trinity?
Is there a Mount Rushmore or a Trinity?
I mean, we could do a Mount Rushmore. That's fine. It's very un-Canadian of us, but that's fine.
There is, but I've got 4. I'm getting fine. More than 4 of the problem. So I was thinking this the other day. If I did a top 10 series with just it's tough that I have to cut 11. Whatever my 11th favorite series is, I'm like, damn. I have to cut that? Mm-hmm. I think it might be Black Company. I love Black Company. Okay, see, I told you this was Kyle's fault.
We were talking about this off screen before it started, Kyle. So
I have legs. Do not believe the slander. Anyway, my Mount Rushmore, we're going in Mount Rushmore fashion with 2 of ones from who are older who I read longer ago.
Okay.
And so it's Sanderson, Butcher, Hob, and K.
Okay.
Someone there, Louis Bujold is standing in the sidelines with a chisel, ready to change one of those faces to her.
Okay.
And I've only read one book by Charles DeLint, but he's going to the store to buy a chisel. Because that book was I really liked that book. It was Memory and Dream by Charles DeLint. There's a guy in Sarah's Discord, fifth faff. He's a huge Charles Lint guy.
Yeah.
Comments on a lot of my videos. I don't know if he comments on yours.
He does. Yeah, he's great.
Does he comment about Charles Lint by any chance?
He might have.
Okay, there's a very good chance he has. Bro's been trying to get me to read Charles Lint for like 3 years. Finally succeeded. Was right. Should have listened to him. That's okay.
Yeah.
So he and then I was like, normally, if I read a book that I love by an author, I go to their Goodreads page and I just click want to read on all of them. What did I do to Evie? Ken Lee just hasn't written enough books, okay? Anyway, I went to his Goodreads page and like bro's written like 80 books. So I did not click want to read on all of them. If I had to describe him in 3 words, pretentious Stephen King.
Okay.
It's like, the book I read, they're kind of living in like this, not quite small town, but it's like in a hipster city. It's like an urban fantasy type thing. And it's like a city that's full of hipsters and they're like artsy people. But like it's kind of got King vibes, but they're all more pretentious people.
Okay. That's funny. So do you have a preferred subgenre of fantasy then? Or like, do you kind of just...
I would say no. Epic fantasy? I mean...
Is Hob, what is Hob classified under? Is she epic fantasy?
I mean, I don't even know what the definition of epic fantasy is anymore.
I don't either. But
fantasy, I don't know. What is I guess is a Song of Ice and Fire high fantasy? Hob has dragons. She's not epic fantasy. Has dragons.
Yeah.
It's very slow paced, character driven high fantasy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works.
whatever A Feast for Crows is, she's that genre.
Okay, that's very specific.
Yeah, my theory is, and this should work for you. My theory is that people who like A Feast and Dance should definitely like Hob. Because they're like really good character writing. Don't care if the pacing gets a little bit sus.
Okay.
I think she's more similar stylistically to Martin than she is to Abercrombie.
Okay. That's good to know.
I
like both of them. So, have you started your reread of Storm?
No, that's going to be an event. It'll be like the main book I'm reading. There's definitely a bunch of books I'm going to read before that.
Yeah, that's fun. I still haven't started my reread of it. I really do need to start my reread of A Game of Thrones. Josh tells me every other day. He's like, "You need to start this," and I'm like, "Yes, I will." And then I get
Kyle's being whatever.
Kyle, this is just Kyle being super.
The thing is, Derry, if we call Hob Grim Hope, we're gonna get into the whole grimdark thing, and I don't know enough. We're not doing that.
I feel like the whole notion of grimdark is kind of interesting because like so much of fantasy has dark aspects to it, and I'm like, they're all kind of just genre blending a lot of the time, and it's okay.
So I did The Blade itself on audio, and I have my take now of why The Blade itself, people read it, it's like, this is grimdark, and then they read something like The Dandelion Dynasty. I think worse things happen in A Grace of Kings than The Blade itself by like actually a fairly wide margin. If you were to add up the suffering in both, I don't think it's that close. This is my take on why Blade itself feels more grimdark. Nothing in that novel is described as beautiful, like ever. Anything that would be something that you think of like natural beauty. They get to this beautiful lakeside forest. It's like shit.
There's no natural beauty, but isn't Artie described as being quite beautiful?
No, it's like, look, there's this statue marble, and it's like, it's recognizable, like someone they've met. It's like, oh, he's really put on a bunch of weight. Everything is ironically beautiful. The one potential exception is Artie from Giselle's point of view, which is actually kind of romantic.
I love Artie and Giselle so very much.
I think Giselle's point of view of Blade itself is basically the plot of like, what if this vain asshole trying to accept the fact that he actually has feelings for someone and just being very confused by this.
Oh my God.
Person who's a dick being very confused about actually kind of caring for someone.
I love it so much.
It's very good.
It's so good. I've said repeatedly and will continue to say forever, everyone knew a Giselle growing up. Like everyone knew one. It was that guy in gym class that you knew was just like such a pompous dick that you didn't want to talk to, but they were good at all the sports and then they were obnoxious. And I was like, yeah, I knew plenty of Giselles growing up, but it was funny reading about one of them because I didn't actually have to hang out with them. So I ended up really liking it for that reason. But I also really just enjoyed Giselle.
Yeah, I'm not saying like that thing as like a positive or negative descriptor,
Yeah.
but I think it's just the vibe Joe Abercrombie is going for is like when you get to a work of art, it's not going to be like, no one's going to see a work of art and be like, wow, like that's amazing. It's described ironically. And the contrast was especially striking because I noticed this early when they got to like a statue. And then the next book I did on audio was The Lions of Our Song. And very dark things happen in K, but K is like, you know,
it's different.
It's very much like, you know, when you get to a city, it's like, you know, look at these shining pillars and beautiful poetry and fountains that will break your heart. And it's like, I mean, you can read the prologue of Lions and it's like
amazing.
Immediately such a contrast.
Yes. That's interesting though. I never really thought about that. I want to reread First Law this year because I did the standalones and Age of Madness this year. And I have the controversial opinion that I still prefer First Law to Age of Madness. So I want to reread them all in the same year so I can decide if that actually is the case. I'm pretty sure it will be just because I prefer the POVs in First Law to Age of Madness, even though I still liked Age of Madness a lot.
I think I definitely prefer Glokta to the Age of Madness POVs, and I maybe prefer Logan to the Age of Madness POVs. Age of Madness, for me, the supporting cast is much, much stronger. Aside to go with, I think it does more interesting thing with the world building, is plotted better, and is more thematic.
Yeah.
But I've joked that, like, you know, Age of Madness, writing has improved, humor has improved, supporting cast has improved, more thematically interesting, better world building, better plotted. First Law trilogy has Glokta, so it's kind of close.
Exactly, right? And that's the
so it's like I kind of get it either way, actually.
Glokta is my favorite character of all time. I love Glokta so much. So for me, that's the pull. I'm like, I want Glokta to be the POV. I just want this. Glokta is Gloria. I will take Gloria as Glokta, but Gloria and Glokta were both chef's kiss for me. But I mean, it was interesting because the secondary POVs, I kind of consider them because like in First Law, I considered our primary POVs to be Giselle, Glokta, and Logan, and then everyone else was kind of secondary, even though they're not really. I would say, I don't know. I struggled with some of the Age of Madness secondary POVs quite a bit, but I love Orso so much. He's arguably one of my favorite POVs.
I think like after the first three, that's where it gets pretty one-sided for me in favor of the second, because I just like all the POVs in Age of Madness.
Oh, do you really? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Broad is a little dull.
A little is generous.
There's Pharaoh. I'm sorry. Pharaoh is.
Oh, I think she's way better than Broad. I really like Pharaoh.
So my line on Pharaoh is Stephen Pacey. Like I found Stephen Pacey made Pharaoh more vivid, but she just made Pharaoh more vividly annoying.
Oh, really?
Boring. I'm sorry. I don't think she has anything going. She's just so one note. Like every note is the same. Like you've seen one Pharaoh scene. You've seen all the Pharaoh scenes. Like,
yeah.
I like. And I really like Joe Abercrombie. He's not like in contention for my favorite author, but I'm like really good writer. Sometimes people like, you know, Pharaoh, he's not good relative to the other Abercrombie characters, but you know, still better than most characters. I'm like, no, she's just really boring actually by like any standard. And Broad, I can kind of see it. His character, it's like, yeah, dude, you take your glasses off before you beat people up. Like,
I know.
I get it. Get over yourself. So those two. And then I guess the other POVs, secondary POVs in First Law, in fairness, are pretty damn good. Like it's West and Dogman. And
exactly. They're so good. That's why
but I really like. But then, I mean, Age of Madness is like Rika's like my fourth favorite.
She's great. She's great. I actually preferred her to Savine, which might be a hot take in terms of the female that he's written. I think Rika is the best one. Even though I did enjoy Savine as a POV, she just wasn't wasn't my favorite.
You know, I knew this would be predictable when it was like, whoa, who's the one POV you don't like in the first Law trilogy? The woman POV. It's like, yeah, well, it's also it's not my fault that Joe Abercrombie was like, I'm going to write one boring character in this book and make it the woman. That's on him.
I think that is the general opinion. Like, honestly,
that's Abercrombie's opinion. So I don't feel bad about it. Have you ever seen he had his like blog he wrote about the female characters in the first Law trilogy? Bro was way harsher on it than I am.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, dude, like it wasn't that bad. Like you improved a lot.
I
like,
would have
loved issues.
Right? I feel like it would have maybe been solved a little bit more had Artie been a POV. Because I feel like we could have gotten all of what was going on with her, which would have been really fun. Like I would have really liked to see from her POV what she was thinking about all the Giselle stuff and the Galacta stuff. So I think it would have been fun had he chosen.
Fortunately, I escaped the hating women allegations because in the Heroes, Finry was my favorite. So
interesting. Gorst is 1000% my favorite.
I get it. He's very entertaining.
He is my second favorite character of Abercrombie. It's Galacta, then Gorst, and then Orso are my top three.
After Galacta, it's so tough for me. Like, the next few are like Orso, Savine, Leo, Rico, Lauren, Logan, and Finry. And it's like, I don't know how to.
The Heroes is probably my favorite out of all of the books, though. Like, I friggin' love the Heroes. It's so good.
I think, for a while, I thought this after I read them, and then I was like, no, maybe that's wrong on time, but then I reread the late stuff. I think I like every trilogy book more than every non-trilogy book.
Okay.
Like, I think my top 6 is literally just the 2 trilogies.
Interesting. I love the Heroes. The Heroes.
But then the Heroes is pretty close. It's my favorite of standalones. Like
the Heroes for me is pretty close to perfect. Like, honestly, it was one of those books that I love humor in a fantasy book, and he just knocks it out of the park for me with the inner monologue of Gorst in that book. So it's hard for me to beat.
I have to say, and I know this sounds petty, but like, do they have to ironically mention that there's no heroes every other page? Like, was he paid by the amount of times he made that? Why does every character in that book know they are in a book ironically titled The Heroes? That is my question.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
That's like there's title drops, and there's what if I title dropped 1.3 times per page?
So how do you feel about a title drop? Do you like a title drop?
I love title drops.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the Clash of Kings one. Mentioned this in the Clash of Kings one because the his will be the Song of Ice and Fire title drop. It's just
Yeah, I had that with a book that I just read where it was the name of it kind of came up in conversation. I was like, I like this.
Title drop in.
It was not in that one, but it does happen in that too. So yeah, I actually had it in the last 2 books I read.
This is I will accept this as legitimate criticism of Robin Hobb. As far as I can remember, she does not have one single title drop. It's very disappointing. That's because the titles are random. Assassin's Apprentice. I hate that.
I'm trying to think of Sanderson, and I think Warbreaker.
I mean, all the Stormlight ones because they're an in-world text.
Yeah.
Hero of Ages that comes up a lot. Shadows of Self never gets dropped. Warbreaker. Oh yeah, Warbreaker's probably the best.
Elantris is kind of like it's a place. So
he doesn't do enough. He doesn't do enough title drops. We need more title drops.
Right? Should write him. You should tell him
the best title drop though is an in-world expression from the Black Company. It's soldiers live and wonder why. And make sure it's not a comma. It's not soldiers live, comma. It's soldiers live, period. And wonder why, period. It's okay. Anyway, there's a lot of good title drops though.
Yeah.
But Abercrombie took it too far. He was like, I shall 500-page book, 500 title drops. You can have too much of a good thing.
You can. But never too much of Galacta. There was never enough Galacta. Abercrombie is so much better than Shadow of the Pretty Good.
I think he's arguing with Pete and just throwing out random shots because he's hostile.
I mean, that's Kyle in a nutshell. He's just hostile about everything.
Thinks I don't have
Not being so aggressive, Kyle.
Pete hasn't read Abercrombie? That's weird.
Really?
Pete, what are you doing? Like, think about the decisions you've made.
Evie also has
contemplate. That makes more sense to me. I feel
It
like
does.
Evie, I'm like, she might like it. Pete though, like, look inward, sir.
So, because you don't necessarily recommend Hob to a lot of people, what would be a book or two that is typically the book that you will recommend to people to pick up?
There's two levels of this. There's book recommend to people who don't read, of which my most recommended book is Project Hail Mary.
Okay.
Because it's very easy and very addicting. For people who do read, I don't do general recommendations, and I have a long interview with them before I ask them questions because I am scared of recommending them a book they don't like.
So what are some of the questions in said interview?
Well, first, it's what books do you like? And then the very important and the one people struggle with, why do you like those books? Because I am not a believer in, for fans of this, read this. Because for every series that people like, there's like
a very specific,
conservatively 176,000 reasons to like that series. And you can like, someone can be like, oh yeah, like I love A Song of Ice and Fire. And you're like, oh, so they love like political intrigue and like character driven stuff. So they're like, oh, you should check out The Lions of Al Rassan. And then it's like, dude, I just love dragons. Dragons are so sick. And it's like, damn, I missed there. But if you're like, why did you like it? And they're like, the dragons are so sick. I feel like I'm making fun of people who like the dragons. If you love the dragons, live your life.
Yep.
You're doing great. But that would change how you recommend it. So the first two are always, what books do you like and why do you like them? What annoys you in books? So I want to avoid, there's all the landmines.
Yeah.
What books do you dislike and why? And then based on that, I will sort through my brain and try and find one that meets as many of the things that they like while having the least amount of things they don't like.
Have you had much success with these?
Yes.
Okay.
I take pride in my book recommending abilities.
Okay. So what has been do you have one that you kind of tend to fall back on more regularly than not? Like, is there one book that you think is more applicable to a mass audience of people than others?
Well, I mean, I will say I am obviously biased towards the books I like.
Well, yes.
Because I just, if I recommend one that fits all of it stylistically and they're like, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. Like 3.5 stars. It's kind of like, why do you recommend it?
Right.
So like, I definitely do. As soon as someone is like, I just like character driven stuff, I'm like Robin Hobb. So I'm biased towards I'm more likely to recommend the people who I think are the best at something.
Okay.
So if someone's like, yeah, I really love like poetic, powerful writing. I'm like, Gabriel K, I got you. If someone's like, I really like getting deep into characters' heads, I'm going to be like, so there's this book called Assassin's Apprentice. I know it sounds like it's about someone who stabs people a lot, but alas, it's about a sad boy. And it's about that character.
Yeah.
And, if someone is like, I'll recommend like Mistborn for if someone wants some of a lot of like power gamers for D&D who really like getting into like the specific rules and like finding ways around it. Power gamers D&D is like Mistborn, and they'll be like, so like if you combine these different, people who like crazy endings as well will get the Sanderson recommendation from me.
That's fair.
Action junkies will get The Rage of Dragons, which is books that were, hyped back in 2020 and then have kind of been forgotten for a bit because book 3 hasn't come out. Yeah. Those are the general ones. One is Vorkoskin's going to get recommended more and more because it's almost, I think, of the things where it's like that are my favorite. If you went down the list until you got to something that you could recommend to most people, Shards of Honor, which is the first Vorkoskin novel, is probably the first thing that I would feel pretty safe as a general recommendation to someone who doesn't read a lot, because I can recommend it actually to just people like blindly. Because if people, it's both good and fast and fun. What are books I love but never recommend?
Hob.
I mean, I do recommend Hob. I just recommend Hob. Like, I'd recommend Hob to you.
Right.
I'm just, if I know someone, oh, hello, who's very orange. Did you have the brain cell today?
No, never does.
No, I've told you. He just gets it Thursday at 4 a.m., so you always miss it.
That's that one little time. Yep.
So, like, yeah, I'll recommend Hob to people who, like, I know read books. Like, a lot of, like, Song of Ice and Fire fans. If I'm like, oh, what do you like about Song of Ice and Fire? And they're like, oh, Feast for Crows is my favorite because, like, the way it explores, like, the consequences of, like, the war and, like, the way you really get in the characters' heads. And I'm like, I got you. Book of the New Sun.
I haven't read that.
There's just so many ways I'm like, someone could hate it that I keep like, I'm like, I'll recommend it to this person. Then I picture them being like, I hate this. And I'm
Do you
like,
think I would like that book? Because I haven't read it
I
yet.
have no goddamn clue who will like Book of the New Sun. It could be, you could read it and you could be like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read. Like, what is going on? Severian is terrible. You could also
even know
read
the premise. I don't know anything about that book.
Well, I can tell you. You could also read it and go like, this is the best thing I've ever read. Gene Wolfe is the smartest man who's ever lived. Both are like, the range of Book of the New Sun is so high, and I'm inherently try and play it safe, especially for people who don't read a lot. Because you only get one chance with people who don't read a lot. Like, if I'm recommending a book to you, if you don't like it, you're not going to stop reading fantasy.
No.
But like, if my coworker is like, yeah, I'm thinking of like reading a book, and I'm like, have you heard like, is Song of Ice and Fire good? Or like Dune? Like, I have one chance. If I pick wrong, they're not reading the book again for 7 years.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
But I tend to play it safe. Okay, do you want to know what Book of the New Sun is about?
Sure. I usually go in blind, but I don't care.
Okay, go in blind.
That's okay.
Or I can give so this is generally, it's a really, really, really far into the future. Like, eons. It's so far in the future that like a super advanced society developed at some point and then fell apart. So everyone is using like, I need to heat my house, I'm gonna go make a fire. But then every once in a while they run into this laser gun and they're like, it must be magic. Because they don't know how it works. It's been like thousands and thousands and thousands of years since they had technology to that degree. So it's about a dude named Severian who allegedly has a perfect memory and is completely honest about everything.
Okay.
And he works for the Torturers Guild and is generally not a pleasant chap. But is going to tell.
That's shocking.
Yeah. And he's going to tell you what happened. And then you're going to go read the summary of a podcast that's deep diving it. And you're going to be like, that's not what Severian told me what happened. And they're going to be like, yes, it is. Read it better, sir. They won't say that. They'll be like, don't worry. But really, there's like a ton of stuff going on. And if you're like me, you're going to miss most of it. But there's so much going on that even if you miss most of it, you still get a ton of cool stuff. Okay. I would say it was not a particularly emotional read for me, but it definitely, like, everything is so interesting about everything. Like, there's so much detail, and there's so much where it's like, Wolf will write something, you'll be like, that's interesting. I want to know more. What's going on?
That's intriguing. Apparently,
bro, Samwise, I can barely tell myself about the El Sabo. I have no clue what's going on.
Yeah,
now
we're good, Evie. I am intrigued by that. I will say I am a very analytical reader, much to my detriment sometimes. Kyle can attest to this. When I was reading my way through Stormlight Archive, I was messaging him like every 2 chapters and saying, this is my theory. I think it's this. I think it connects to this. I can get really swept up in that. So when I was reading Spear, I had this conversation with Evie the other day where I was like, telling me to turn my brain off while reading does not work for me. I just can't do it. It's not the way I'm programmed.
I feel like it's not turn your brain off, because I don't think you're like turn your brain off for either. It's turn your brain on to maximum, but you just have to move on from the fact that your brain's missing 85% of the stuff.
So here's the thing, and this is what I was saying to Evie. I felt like if someone had said to me before starting Spear, read Spear the way that you would read an epic, like the Iliad, the Odyssey, or Gilgamesh, and I would have gone into that book with a very different expectation than I did, because it hit me about 30% through the book, and I was like, this is how I should be reading this book. It's the same way that I would read those. And that really altered my perspective going forward. So I enjoyed the book significantly more at that point. And I feel like retroactively, had I had that mentality from the beginning, I probably would have enjoyed it more.
Interesting for turn your brain off for the confusing books, because I feel like there may have been a breakdown communicate, because I remember I was in chat and I was like, if you get to like page 60 and you don't know what's going on, like that's fine.
Yeah.
That if I think turn your brain off, I'm like John Wick, brain go burr, man shoot people, jujitsu, fun, entertainment,
Right.
man kick dog, bad. Man who kick dog gets shot.
Dead.
Good.
Yes.
For Spear or Malazan or Book of the New Sun or Tera Ignita, which to me is like the 4 series where I'm like, this is a quite challenging thing that I've read.
Sure.
I think you should turn your brain on to overdrive, but you just have to accept that the overdrive brain is insignificant to catch everything.
That's
like,
fair.
I think that's what, and that's for Malazan, I think, get caught up on people where you read something and you just have to be like, I have no goddamn clue why that person is doing this. Mm-hmm. And you have to be okay with just being like, whatever, I'll figure it out later. It'll be important later. If it's important later, I'll be fine.
I have not read Malazan yet, or Malazan, however we want to say that word. Haven't read it yet. I'm thinking it might be soon. I'm starting to get the itch to give it a try. I'm really hit or miss on whether or not I'm going to like that series. Like, I'm really hit or miss, but
I don't know who's going to like Malazan until they
That's the thing. I don't know. I've had some people tell me that they think I will really like aspects of it. And some people tell me straight up that they're like, I don't think you're going to like anything about that book. But I don't know. I'm willing to try it and see. And just go.
So Samwise is asking what's more difficult to understand, Book of the New Sun or Malazan. So one thing is they are challenging for completely different reasons. Like they get compared a lot and they're actually like not similar at all. Like when you read both, it's a completely different reading experience. Book of the New Sun, they're both good and weird and challenging. But the things that make them good are totally different. The things that make them weird are totally different. And the things that make them challenging are totally different. I find Book of the New Sun clearly more challenging to read than Malazan.
Interesting.
I think that's probably true on average.
Okay.
Book of the New Sun has way less characters and has way less, like, if you graphed out everything that's going on for Book of the New Sun, there would be way less lines.
Okay.
Each of those lines is way harder to figure out.
Okay.
Like, each of those lines is like Severian is just describing his horse as like a destrider, and then later it roars, and you're like, oh, so this is like some weird genetically modified animal that like vaguely resembles a horse, but he can't translate because it's written with no made up words. And so, but there's no words in English to describe a bunch of the stuff in this world because it's eons in the future. So he's just like decided that this is the word for that. Which, by the way, there's no made up words in Book of the New Sun. Get your thesaurus. Get ready to Google some words, because that happens a bunch where he doesn't want to use like the common word, because then you'll be like, that's a horse. And it's like, but it's not a horse. It's just Severian had to describe something, and like the frame narrative is that it's been translated to English. And the translator was like, you don't have a word for weird genetically modified horse thing. So I'm calling it a destrider. I forget how to say that name. Anyway. So I think Book of the New Sun is harder, but they're so different.
Interesting. Tyler, I love this for you. I am curious how your experience with Book Lovers went, because that is my least favorite of Emily Henry's novels. So I'm curious. Jimmy, I want to know why you think I won't like it, because my friend Caleb also is very strongly in the camp that he thinks that I will not like it. The one thing I will say that is a turnoff for me that I know about Malazan is the long chapters. I don't love long chapters because I'm a completionist. So when I'm reading, I like getting to the end of a chapter and then I can put a book down, and I get very frustrated when I can't do that. And I found that way about Spear. specifically in Before. I was like, Before has taken us a really long time to get through.
Before was,
And
yeah.
I mean, there's kind of the like mini stops where the sentence will then transition you into the next part of the story. But I'm like, it's not a real stop.
No,
it's a
fake.
continuation.
Doesn't
So
count. You didn't
I
accomplish
struggled.
anything when you got to those.
Yeah, so I struggled with Before. So I anticipate that that'll be very similar for me when I'm reading Miles.
Why are they all 24 chapters? If I ever got to ask you now, I want to know if he got charged for chapter 25 and on. Like, it's such an arbitrary number. Like, why 24? They're literally, I think Gardens of the Moon and House of Chains are 26 chapters. Every other Steven Erikson book I have read is exactly 24 chapters. No more, no less. Erikson, he's done the math. He's determined that's the correct amount. I don't really like long chapters either, but I feel like a bunch of my favorite authors I've been reading have gaslighted me and like just converted me through being good enough. Right. Where I'm just like, fine, I'll forgive your long chapters. And then it's like, wait, like 3/4 of my favorite authors write really long chapters. I'd like to thank Louis Bujold for being an author who I really like, who writes normal bloody length chapters.
Yeah.
Ken Liu as well. Ken Liu writes short chapters. Thank you, Ken Liu.
I started The Grace of Kings 2 days ago because it's our book club's pick for August, which I'm excited about because I haven't read anything by Ken Liu yet. So I'm excited to give it a go. The first little bit I thought was very beautifully written. So far, so good.
That's another one of those series I have a hard time recommending, but I love because all the books are, other than like book 1 is like really different from book 2, which is like really different from books 3 and 4. So to recommend, I have to be like, you will like all 3 of these. And a lot of people will, but it's hard for me to believe that they will until they do. So that's probably one of the most under-recommended series from me relative to enjoyment.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I just feel like I don't see it discussed much outside of our little corner of BookTube. Like it hasn't broken through yet, and I'm curious to see if that's going to happen with it. Because like my bookstores often don't have his stuff, and I'm like, I wish they did.
Yeah, I think it'll be, for the reason of all 3 being different, hard for it to ever hit like critical mass into big popularity because you just need people with relatively wide reading taste. Because if they have narrow reading taste, like it doesn't fill any niche, because Grace of Kings fills a niche. Like it's one of its main inspirations was the Iliad. Like it's told very like sweeping fashion. And then Wall of Storms is more of what you'd expect from like an epic fantasy novel. Okay. And then Veiled Throne and Speaking Bones are doing their own thing. That's different from the other 2. So it's like you need someone to like all 3 of those. And it's kind of hard for me to see that happening extremely widely.
Sure.
Which,
King's excitement here. Yes, you guys.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
About it with us in our Discord because we're getting ready to do it. And it's exciting.
Remember my like, me thinking about like I'll be really sad that Series 11 isn't on the list.
Yeah,
that Series 11 is getting kicked out by Grace of Kings. Grace of Kings is in the top 10, 100%.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm excited because I don't know, like. I always say to people that I feel fantasy needs more standalones, but simultaneously, I love a series. I love being able to really dig my claws into something and go, yes, I'm immersed and I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm a binger. I don't know about you, but like if I like a series and it's completed, I will read straight through.
I used to binge more. Now I'm like, if I'm in a series, it's like every other book will be the long series. But I haven't read a really long series. Like the last... thing is, I say the last really long series I finished was Black Company because it's like 10 books, but its word count is shorter than the Dandelion Dynasty. So maybe the Dandelion Dynasty is the last. Have I read anything longer than the Dandelion Dynasty? Vorkoskin. I'm on like book 10. What am I talking about? And I binged it. Because I went on vacation to Southeast Asia and I just brought my e-reader with like a bunch of Vorkoskin novels and I just binged them. I read like 11 books and I read like 8 books in like 11 days. It was awesome. I thought I was washed up. I was like, I can't binge books anymore. My brain, it's lost its power. And then I learned I wasn't washed up.
It's a gift. I love binging a series. Honestly, like I was kind of sad when I got to the end of my personal year of Sanderson because I was able to binge Mistborn each era. And I was like, oh, that won't be the case anymore because I know going forward, I will read all of them as they are released. But I loved having just the next one to jump into for all of them.
Are you going to read the pre-release chapters?
I'm probably not going to. I'm probably not going to.
This isn't a good time for me to be like, the prologue was so good.
So I have read the prologue.
It's the new and improved prologue.
So I haven't done that one yet. I did it like when he read the thing a while ago.
Yeah.
I am tempted to read through them just to see. I might just do the prologue and leave it from there. And I don't know. It's going to depend on my mood. It's honestly.
I'm sure Bookborn's going to do like every difference between this prologue and that.
Right.
Maybe I should do that. Bookborn, are you working on that already? If you are, please tell me. Because if not, that feels like a Bookborn video. That's
definitely the Cosmere Connections Bookborn video of what have you learned in the prologue?
A lot. Yeah, when I read the first one, I was like, that was damn good prologue. This one, the second time, like, it's like, oh, editing works actually.
I am interested on the POV it is for the prologue. I am really intrigued. So I'm excited based on that. But I mean, I'm just excited for the book in general. I'm really, really amped. I will say though, I felt really spoiled in a way because of the fact that I read all of these books of his last year and the newest Stormlight is coming out this year. Like I've only had to wait a year pretty much.
You're going to have to wait like 10 years for the next one. You are not.
I'm now joining the club of waiting. Lost in Discovery.
True.
Fair. You didn't answer me though about why you think I won't like Malazan. You can text me after if you want because I am genuinely curious. But I am really excited though. So I don't know. Maybe.
So speaking of authors that one I've brought up like 7 times, where's one Lewis McMaster Bujold on your radar? Is that?
I mean, it hasn't been on my radar.
I want to write that down somewhere. You know.
I mean, did I scroll past it? I'm sorry, Jimmy.
I missed it as well.
I missed it. I'm scrolling back.
The psychic distance from the characters will have you feeling not invested.
That's entirely possible. I do like feeling connected to my character.
That being said, Grace of Kings will be an interesting test because I think Grace of Kings is arguably even more psychically distant. And you like epic. You like the Iliad.
I like the Iliad. I love the Odyssey, and I really, really like Gilgamesh. I've read all of them multiple times. So yeah, I do enjoy that. I go about it differently. I don't know how to explain it. And I think this is why I would have enjoyed Spear more because I go at it from an approach where like you aren't really meant to connect with your characters in that way. You're meant more to observe them. And they're almost a learning experience for you where they're caricatures almost, and you're supposed to learn from their experience and their journey.
You'll be fine. Jimmy's he's pessimistic sometimes, you know? He's doing a little Nyla. He's like, you know. It's like no one will like Malazan until they read. It's gonna be okay. Jimmy, is that how you convinced that answer? That feels like that's got to be an answer that's cause for optimism, right?
I don't know. I will give it a go. I've been told by most people that I should still read the first 2 books, and then I can make my full assessment. But we'll see. I will say I typically do tend to give most series at least 2 books, unless I absolutely detest the first book. And I haven't really, I DNF'd 1 book earlier in the year. That was book 1 of a series. And I was like, I don't know if this is just a not for right now book for me, or if it's a no for forever. So I even still will probably give that one another go just to see.
Evie is asking whether she should start Bujold with fantasy or sci-fi. I don't know. So, Curse of the Challenge, your 2 main options that I've read are Curse of the Challenge or Shards of Honor. They are both really excellent, in my opinion. Shards of Honor is much faster. It's much snappier dialogue. Curse of the Chalian, I think, is the tighter novel. Curse of the Chalian is I think one of the tightest novels I've ever read, where the amount of scenes where you read it and you're like, oh, this is like, it's a vibes scene. It's like a introduce this character scene. Look at the cool world scene. This bro's got this cool thing going on. Vibes. And then the amount of those scenes, they're just all directly plot relevant. And it's like, it's not a super like plot driven book. Like it's all the conflict is driven by the character's actions, but it's like everything is plot relevant, but also it's not convoluted. It's kind of wizardry. I legitimately like when I read it, I was just like, I don't know if I've ever read a book that did that to this degree.
Interesting.
So it has that. I think on the other hand, Shards of Honor like gets kind of compelling instantly. Like introduced to the character. Oh, things are happening. It's page 2. Cool.
Yeah.
It's got, I think, characters who are more immediately interesting. I think the characters in Chalian are excellent, but they're kind of like, oh, this is a person. Let's see what's going on with them. And then like the more you learn about them, the more interesting they keep getting. While for Shards of Honor, it's just like, these people are awesome. Like that.
Sure.
I like Curse of the Chalian slightly more. I think Shards of Honor has more mass appeal. I don't think mass appeal really matters with Evie here. Probably Curse of the Chalian for Evie would be my thought. Yeah.
Curse of the Chalian it is. To answer this, no. That is not my plan for now or probably ever. But
yeah, I don't think you'll like the other ones.
No,
like I think they're better than Malice, but I don't think they're enough better than Malice, or they improve in the ways that you don't like about Malice.
Yeah, I did a little research after I finished it to see if it was something that I might want to continue on with, and I'm not super compelled to. And that's not to say that I don't think it works for other people and that I think it's just a terrible series. It's just that it doesn't work for me. But I am really interested to try Bloodborne, so I will try that one. Yeah.
Well, actually, she was going to invite me on, and the reason it took so long, she learned I like Faithful and the Fallen, and so that's why it's been taking this long, because she doesn't actually want to talk with anyone who enjoys the series.
I had Theo on last week, and it's one of his favorite series of all time. I was like,
you know what? My slander is not internally consistent. I'm just trying to slander people here, okay? And I'd appreciate if you'd let me.
I mean, you and Theo are probably best friends because we know everybody in Canada, and you guys both live in Vancouver. So
I have met Theo as well.
There you go. Are you guys close-ish to each other in all actuality, or not really?
Yeah, we're actually like, I mean, kind of far enough that I'm not going to run into Theo by accident. But like, if Theo was like, if it was like, you have to go find Theo, he's probably like traffic dependent. Things have to go over the damn Lionsgate Bridge to get to Theo. So if I went to go to wherever Theo lives, a house or apartment, and it was like a time that's low on traffic, probably like 20 minutes. If it's rush hour, like an hour and a half. So, and also probably will take me another 30 minutes to park there because it's downtown Vancouver and it's terrible.
That's always fun.
Yeah. Anyway, doesn't have something like surprise. Oh, I feel like hook-wise, it kind of like the hook. It doesn't really have as many like twists. It doesn't have the reveals to the same degree. Curse of the Chalian has reveals where you're like, it's all coming together, and it's like, oh my god, all those things that I thought were vibes, they were relevant. That was foreshadowing. What is going on?
So you said earlier that overall this year has been a better reading year than last year. What are the books this year that have contributed to it overall being a better reading year?
Well, Vorkorskin would be the main ones. Someone asked, like, there was like on Discord, people were posting their top 10 for the year, and I do the one per author was very different than the not one per author, because the not one per author I think had 6 Vorkorskin novels on it.
Wow.
But the other novels are Tera Ignita, Memory and Dream. Like I've read my book of the year last year would be either like 4th or 5th this year, and it's there's still nearly half a year to go.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else have I read that's good. I liked Children of Dune way more than I expected to, so that was a
Okay.
happy surprise.
Yep.
There's been a couple of book club books I ended up liking, and I think last year there were some book club ones where we'll say by coincidence they were worse, and I was not directly involved in picking them, and we'll just say that that's a fluke. But these were pretty cool. A new Sun Eater book came out. That was pretty helpful. So yeah, those things I would say. But honestly, if I'd read the exact same books and just read the Vorkoskin, that would be a substantial difference on its own.
Sure. I am going to be starting Sun Eater at some point this year too. So I have that.
Hey, you know what, Evie? Before me, I had not seen the really likes Dune, very mid on Dune Messiah, really likes Children of Dune. Like everyone who went down on Dune Messiah, it just like stayed or kept going down. So that was one of those where it was like, I gotta read it. I'm probably not gonna like it that much, but I gotta read it. And then I started reading it and I was like, wait, this is kind of awesome. What's going on? I was not prepared for this eventuality.
Right. Well, that's cool. Do you have a series in general that you are really excited to start for the remainder of the year? Because I would encourage you to start Warlord Chronicles personally.
Yeah, Warlord. I'm pretty excited for Prince of Nothing as well. I'm very worried for Prince of Nothing. Like that's one where, you have the idea of like the range of a series on like how much you could like it. It's got a very wide range, Yeah. I don't know. I generally I feel like some people like save series they're excited for.
I'm not that person, but yes.
I just like, if you ask me, hey, what series are you like really excited to start? It's probably the one I'm going to start next.
There you go.
That's why I started it next, because I'm excited about it. And like, I still haven't come close to running out of series that I'm excited for. So that hasn't been a problem at all. So I just keep reading what I think I'll like.
I think you're really going to like Warlord. I really do think you're strongly going to like Warlord.
I think so. Ben and Kyle both did the You Choose the TBR, and they've done it like I was involved in both. So I kind of feel like I have to do it. The chances that neither of them pick Warlord is approaching 0. So
it's going to be 0, yes.
Actually, in fact, if neither of them pick Warlord, I'm going to call the police, and I'm going to be like, these people have been kidnapped. They've just suddenly told me something is wrong.
Yes.
You need to go now. You know what, Mitch? That's because tough. Be better at finding series. I don't know what to tell you.
Have you read Warlord Chronicles, Mitch? Because if not, you gotta read it. That for me so far is my series of the year. I love it. It might be my all-time favorite trilogy. Might be. It's so good. I love it so much. That is one that I would highly recommend doing on audio as well. Jonathan Keeble.
I don't do audio the first time.
He's so good.
Trust me, you don't want me to do audio the first time.
Good.
I promise I will like it less if I do audio the first time. Okay. I will read it normally. And then the fact that the audio is really good will make it highly likely that I do an audio reread at some point, even if I like the series a little bit. That being said, it's favorite trilogy is a very tough call because my favorite trilogy is the Live Ship Traders. And I think I discussed how repeating Ship of Magic made me feel. So for it to be my favorite trilogy, I will have to get 40 pages into the first book and be like, this is obviously better than everything else. Like everything else. Like nothing else even compares. This person is just so much better. Like, how do you even quantify?
That's the thing, because I have read other Cornwall books and I didn't like them anywhere near as much as Warlord Chronicles. I enjoyed them, and I still think that I thought he was a very good author when I read them. But I got to Enemy of God, which is book 2 of Warlord, and I felt sort of similar, where I sat back and said, I don't know if there's a book that I would say I like more than this one right off the bat. And I mean, they're definitely, now that I've had a little bit of distance from it, I think that it's probably on par with some books that I really, really love, but it's so good. It's just so good. It's one of those books that I feel more and more now that I'm reading series that I like book 2s significantly more than book 1s, which didn't used to be the case. I used to feel like it was more strongly book 1 and book 2 would kind of wane a little bit, and then we'd come back up for a book 3 being a solid, hopefully a solid conclusion if it was a trilogy. But lately, book 2s have been better for me, and Enemy of God was definitely that, even though I love Winter King very, very much. But
I think definitely on average, final books are my favorite. Like,
okay.
It's on average, it's like the low correlation, high surety. Like there's a big enough sample that like I'm very sure that usually like it's pretty rare for. I hear people be like, you just can't find a series that doesn't flop the ending, and I'm like, really? Like I actually feel like most of the endings are pretty good. I don't know. Maybe I'm very okay with like almost any tone of ending as long as you don't shy away from it.
I would agree with Terry here, just to get back to this for a little bit. I don't know if you immersion read at all, but just listening to how certain names are pronounced for that series is very helpful because they do not sound the way that they look. So,
I can just pronounce them wrong in my head, and that's okay. That's what I do for most books. That's what I did for 10 Molson books. Because
so, do you have a favorite series conclusion ending? Would it be Realm of the Elderlings?
Yeah, it's Assassin's Creed. I mean, it's my favorite like book generally, and it's the last book of like my favorite series. It's partially my favorite book because the actual ending beat is my favorite ending beat.
Sure.
It's not just like it happens to be my like favorite and also is an ending. But a lot of my favorite books are final books in series because like Lord of Emperors is, I mean, it's the second book in a duology, but that is still the final book. And I remember for 2022, my top 10 list was like Lord of Emperors, final book of a duology, Speaking Bones, final book of a quartet, Soldiers Live, final book of a long series. And I feel like I'm missing one. There might have even been another one. And it was all final books.
That's interesting. Yeah, Daniel says a lot of people in booktube spheres are almost never reading endings. There's so much fear of being left out of hype series. Like I said, I will binge. So I always get right to the end. But I feel like I'm really picky about endings. I'm that person where I just want it to tonally feel consistent. That for me is my main thing. It's like as long as something isn't super coming out of left field, or if it's too reliant on magic, deus machina type thing in the end, that for me will really take me out of an ending. So I don't know. It's funny because like I really love Sanderson, but Sanderson is someone who I don't typically love the endings of his books a whole lot.
Yeah, I really like because there's like how the conflict is like resolved. And I think I'm a bit more picky about that. Like everyone's not like it happens reasonably where it's like they defeat the bad guy, and the way to fate of the video is like, I guess that works. They're like, I'm like, all right, I guess, sure, like why not? There's no reason that shouldn't work if you say it works that way,
right?
And then there's like the final beat, and I think authors are usually pretty good at like the final, like the wrap up on average. There's definitely some I don't like. Like, I've read The Witcher, and
questionable.
I don't know how we feel about The Lady of the Lake, but it's of all the endings I've read, it's definitely one of them, is what I would say. And there's definitely some endings where I'm like, didn't like it, but on average, I'm usually like, I like finishing the series. I'm like, I'm done now. That was fun.
I that's the thing. I like getting that conclusion to it. I will say for me, again, I think Warlord Chronicles probably has my favorite ending to a trilogy. I just really think it's a solid ending. But it's funny because like I love First Law. The ending is it's fine. Like I see why people have issues with it. And then at the same time, I'm like, I get why other people really like it. I
feel like the ending is extremely tonally consistent.
It is.
Like
for me, it's fine.
Everything is bittersweet. I don't know. I'm on team. Most of the endings are pretty good. If I turn around and look at my bookshelf, I mean, this is the bookshelf of things I like, so it's hard for me to. So that's kind of unfair. But like, I'm like, the first thing I looked at, I was about to start pointing at things for Chris Lending, and then my eyes went over here to my bookshelf, and I was like, all right, let's look somewhere else.
That's so much. We got to move. Yeah, exactly. That's
Someone just brought up Lightbringer, meaning Brent Week's Lightbringer, not Light Spacebringer. Yeah, that ending wasn't good. That was one of them.
Murray.
The orange cat is like,
he's loud because he wants his dinner, his second dinner.
Chad can apparently travel in time. That's cool.
Can he?
Well,
yes, there we go.
I don't know. I don't think it was quite as good as Winds of Winter, personally. I mean, Dream of Spring. Yeah.
We can hope, right? Usually endings will rate higher on my.
Yeah. Can we get a statistical analysis of people's average rating of final books, but only counting the people who read the entire series ratings for the first book? Because later books always have the higher rating on Goodreads. Because people read book one and then they dip out if they hate it, and then it self-selects out. But can we get a statistical analysis where you exclude all the people who didn't finish the series and only count the people who finished Wheel of Time's rating of Eye of the World, and get it for all these and see if endings on average
that would not be me then.
Yeah, you don't count. Your rating doesn't count here. We're silencing
haven't
you.
Finished. I finished the first 3 books and that's it. So I would be excluded from that. It was funny because I started Nevernight a couple days ago, and I've never read anything by Jay Kristoff before. And I went on to add it to my Goodreads and saw how many people had reviewed book 1. And I was like, I'm interested to see how many people stuck through this series. And I think it's something along the lines of just over 100,000 reviews for Nevernight. And then by book 3, it's like 40,000. I was like,
that's pretty normal, I think.
It's so funny to see how much of a swing.
And I feel like it's that for every series. Let's check out, take a series that you're not allowed to say that if there's a big drop off, it's indicative of quality. Let's check The Blade itself. The Blade itself has 256,622 ratings on Goodreads.
All deserved, unless they're bad.
Except the 1-star one. Last Argument of Kings. So we're going from 257,000 to 165,000.
Okay, that's still higher than I thought it would be, honestly.
That's a reasonably good retention rate.
Yeah, I feel like.
And also, some of those aren't DNFs. Some of those are I've read book 2. I just haven't read book 3 yet.
Exactly.
Which is why, if you see polls on YouTube of which of these books is in your series is your favorite, there's a huge bias towards the early ones. Yeah. Because a lot more people have read Eye of the World than have read A Memory of Light.
Sure. It's funny though, because I feel like most people I've spoken to prefer Memory of Light.
Well, yeah, Memory of Light's better. So that makes sense. But which is why, so I remember, because after I finished Wheel of Time, there was a random Twitter poll of Wheel of Time brackets, and Eye of the World kept doing really well, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the one everyone has read. Yeah, it beat Knife of Dreams, which I know you haven't read either. I see you just muted your cat there. Yeah, and I just want to say that was good technique, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm trying really hard because I don't. Josh, if you're listening, please come deal with Murray.
He's he made fun of my lack of brain cells. Yell at the man.
Yeah. He's the worst, but I love him so very, very much.
My cat is napping. Thank you, Ven.
Yeah, that would be nice. Murray.
She was bad this morning. This morning she was once a month, I'm just going to try and make Jake a morning person.
Once a month? Yeah.
It was the once a month at 6 a.m. She was like, you're a morning person now. And at one point, this was sleep deprived, completely groggy Jake. I was just like, shh.
That's awesome. Yeah, we put them in our basement at night, so we do have separation from them.
Oh, I can't do that. She'd murder me.
That's the thing. We've trained them to do this because otherwise we got no sleep.
Yeah, I think Finn would murder me. I think I would. One day there'd be no more videos. He's not replying on Discord.
That's it.
And then you get an update later, and it's his cat killed him in his sleep.
We have one that's sort of like that. She does stay upstairs at night, but the others go into the basement. But she needs her alone time, her quiet time from the other cats. She's very particular, but it is what it is.
Other than Warlord Chronicles, which has been mentioned, are there any other series that you're thinking that you're oh, I want to recommend this to people that you think I would like?
that I think you specifically would
Yeah.
like. Let me take a look.
Yeah. Turn around, look at the bookshelf. It's the classic move.
I feel like we've read mostly similar things. Can I recommend standalones?
Absolutely. I'm a guy Gabriel K man.
Have you read Cersei?
I haven't.
I feel like you would probably like Cersei.
I think that's the book I randomly own, and I can't remember where I got it.
I think
Usually,
you
like
probably like that.
Okay. Usually, if you point to a book that I own, I'm like, yeah, I got this in this circumstance. I own this book.
Right.
No idea why.
That one I recommend to people if they like beautiful writing. I think her prose is absolutely gorgeous. I wouldn't say it's at the same level as Kay, but I feel like it's
I don't
very
expect it to be.
strong. No, but I think
if anyone tells me it's like this guy writes as well as Kay or this girl, I'm like, I don't believe you. So that's okay.
Right? Yeah. She has my favorite opening line to a book with that book specifically. I really, really like it. And I feel tonally it is consistent the whole way through. And the thing that I really love about it is that throughout the entirety of the story, you never really know how you feel about Cersei, if you think that she is a heroine or a villain of the book. And I really like how she wove in mythology as a whole for that. So if you are familiar with Greek mythology at all, you're going to find it intriguing, because what she did that I thought was so interesting is that all of these secondary characters from prominent myths become more the primary figures in this story. So I really, really love that. And I will recommend that to you. And I recommend it to a lot of people, just as like, if you've liked mythology ever in your life, you'll probably like this, unless you're Alan.
Well, he's his own. Alan has his own rules. It's the Alan rules for recommendations, yeah.
But yeah, I would recommend Cersei for sure. I think you would probably vibe with that one.
Pete's asking, do you just like Cersei because it reminds you just like Cersei the character, and so you're just like, that name of the book sounds familiar, so I'm choosing to like it?
So here's the thing, because I had read the Iliad and the Odyssey before I read A Song of Ice and Fire, Cersei for me will always be Cersei of mythology, and then Cersei Lannister was secondary for me with that name. But or if you're the Game of Thrones creators who called her Cersei, which drove me absolutely insane in every single interview that they did. I was like, guys, just know. You should know her character name. It's Cersei. Get it together. And I feel like you've read Pure and Easy, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I would say like those would be the two that I generally recommend to people.
I love Pure and Easy.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah.
I randomly read the first couple pages the other day. And I was like, it's really good.
I'm thinking it's going to be a book club option for September. And I'm really hoping that it gets selected, because Josh hasn't read it yet. And I'm like, I want you to read this book, because I've been gushing about it for well over a year.
I'm curious is she just generally hesitant because Dune Messiah didn't work out? That's fair. I just have to mention earlier, because favorite titles came up, I would just have to mention that my favorite title is The God Is Not Willing by Steven Erikson.
Oh, that's a great title.
Yeah. Fits the book very well.
What was the one? Josh and I came up with a few. He really liked Red Seas Under Red Skies.
Yeah. And Lies of Lockamore. Love alliteration.
Yeah, both of them are really great titles.
I think Red Seas is a better title. Worst book, better title.
I haven't read book 2 and 3 yet. I've only read book 1 of.
I think Red Seas is very good. I just like Lies of Lockamore more.
So Josh, I think, ranked them 1, 3, 2 when he finished, but he said that 3 was really close to 1. Like he really, really liked 3. And he still super enjoyed 2, but it just didn't hit the mark in the same way, I feel.
I think Joe Abercrombie titles are very good. Like Wisdom of Crowds, Trouble with Peace, Little Hatred. Those are bangers.
Great titles. Yeah. I'm trying to think here now. Like I haven't read it yet, but I do like The Shadow of What Was Lost. I feel like that's a really good title.
I think the ones Evie just said for like Tyrant Philosophers, House of Open Wounds, City of Last Chances.
Yeah, these are all really good titles.
They are.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think here of
Leviathan Wakes is a good title.
That's a good title. I have
looking at your bookshelf now. I've looked at my bookshelf too much.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, I noticed it's always, I think you're always blocking it off, but The Witcher is still there enough to be prominent on your bookshelf. What are your
So
thoughts on The Witcher?
I haven't fully read it. Josh
Okay.
has read all of them. That's why they're here.
Okay.
So, yes, but we've got Lee Bardugo right here, Witcher, Asimov, and then Expanse. So
These are the books people never see.
Yeah, they don't ever see them. It's a big
Yeah.
shelf. And then I underneath it, I don't know if people see, they don't really get to see that one. I'm going to just tilt this a little bit here.
Oh.
I've got my Emily Henry books, and then I've got Spear Cuts Through Water, 2 books that I bought at Barnes & Noble last week that I haven't read yet, and a bunch of Bernard Cornwell books. Those are all of the Saxon Chronicles that I've got there. And then the bottom shelf is either duplicates and cookbooks. And then on this side, I've got my Harry Potter stuff. And the one below it, I have right here, got Lord of the Rings stuff on the end, Hexologists, World of Warcraft books, because my husband and I met through World of Warcraft. And then I've got a few GGK books, The Way of Edan. What is the name of that series again? It's the Philip Pullman trilogy.
Not His Dark Materials.
His Dark Materials, thank you. I was like, Amber Spyglass is one of them. It's not the name of the trilogy. And then I've got my Sailor Moon manga and Terry Pratchett mixed in there. So yeah, those are the shelves that no one ever really gets to see, but they are there. So.
Chat's coming in with the recommendations I've never heard of. So
all right, what are we? Sun Eater has some banger titles.
Howling Dark, Demon in White, Disquiet Gods.
Empire of Silence is also a pretty great title.
Yeah, they're pretty good generally.
Yeah.
Actually, they're all kind of good. I really like the titles of Tera Ignita that I'm reading right now. Two Like the Lightning, 7 Surrenders, The Will to Battle, and Perhaps the Stars.
Those are great titles.
Yeah. I just want an Alan Jeopardy question for the perhaps to be Perhaps the Stars, so we can have Perhapsception. It can be like maybe celestial bodies, perhaps.
Oh my gosh, I love Sailor Moon.
That's a really good title. Desolation Called Peace and A Memory Called Empire. Those are really good titles. I don't like the books as much. I know some people who like them a lot more, so I wouldn't dismiss them, but I don't like them.
Very good titles, yeah. His Dark Materials, Beating for Paradise Lost. To Like the Lightning is Shakespeare, I think.
Yeah, it is a Shakespeare reference, and I know this because there's a chapter in Disquiet Gods called To Like the Lightning, and so I was like, I'm pretty sure Rockio hasn't read Alma Palmer yet, so this is not a Tera Ignita reference. So that means they both have to be referencing something else. So I asked, and someone was like, that's because it's Shakespeare.
Do you know which Shakespeare it's from?
No.
Okay.
I Googled it. I have known. I Googled it, and I was like, oh, it's that one.
I'm putting you on the spot, so no pressure.
No, if you give me Shakespeare trivia, I'll lose. So
yeah, I'm not great with it either. Honestly, Josh is better with that than I am. I know the odd thing, but no. If
you let me mute my mic and type for a bit, and don't think that I can find it out.
Go for it.
Romeo, chat answered it for us. Romeo's Love is Too Like the Lightning. The funny thing is, I should have just gone for it because in my head, I was like, is it Romeo and Juliet? And I was like, there's no lightning in Romeo. What am I talking about?
Right?
I should have gone for it. I should have trusted myself.
Always go with that gut instinct.
Something Wicked This Way Comes. That is a great title too.
Yeah, really, really good title. See, that's the thing. There's so many fun titles. And
meanwhile,
just good.
Assassin's Quest, Ship of Magic. You know, for a bit, my favorite book ever was Ship of Magic. And people would ask, and I'm like, I don't
want to tell you.
Yeah. So I'll just be like, oh, it's the Live Ship Traders trilogy. It's my favorite.
That's a great, I think that's a good
series
trilogy title. Like, that's the thing. First Law is really basic. You know, like that's really basic, I feel like. So I get
Wise Man's Fear is great. That's a really good title.
I mean, he's got some good titles in general. Like, oddly enough, these are both next to me right now. So
I just saw one from Only the Best Fantasy Novels, With Mercy Towards None. I don't know that title, but that sounds like a really good title.
Is that Glenn Cook?
I've been told it is Glenn Cook's. To Rise Hell's Chasm, that's a really good title. I think
And
Soldiers Live is good. Black Company has some good titles,
have you
but
read
they're
Jenny
not great.
First?
No,
I
it's
haven't
on the list.
either, and I want to give her a try just because everyone says really rave things about her for the most part.
It's definitely someone who's on the list.
Yeah, that's Glenn Cook.
I wonder if Thornwell is trolling or if he just like is like, no, this is a really good title. Is its first rule? Aside from like even just separate from not liking the book, I don't know if I.
It's from Dread Empire.
Yeah,
Awesome.
one of these years I'm gonna randomly binge a bunch of Glenn Cook stuff that isn't Black
Abie
Company.
was telling me yesterday that I should be trying Glenn Cook. So I feel like this is the thing. You start BookTube and you think you're just going to talk about books, and then you make all these friends, and then they tell you all the things that they think you should read, and then your list never ever stops, which is great, but simultaneously you want to just read everything.
Yeah, well, if you gotta read everything, only one way to start.
Right? Exactly. Yes, Agatha Christie.
And then there were none, especially in the context of like when you read I haven't read that yet. I own it.
Yeah. The Dragon Never Sleeps is very good.
Well, I'll get to it in like 5 years.
With all of the standalone and titles in general.
I'm sure I'll enjoy it in 5 years when I randomly read like 20 Glenn Cook books in 1 year.
Right? So what is on the docket next? Have you decided what is going to be the next read?
Yes. I think the next series will be, I think the next book I read after Perhaps the Stars will be Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake. And then I think Prince of Darkness That Comes Before. And then I think I might read Blood Over Bright Heaven by M.L. Wong, which is person who wrote Sword of Kaigen.
I haven't read Sword of Kaigen yet, and I do want to read it.
Yeah, you should do that. You should fix that. But I told you to read too many things, so now I'm like, I need to set priorities. Okay, priorities. Hob, Vorkosigan, continue Dandelion, maybe continue Dandelion before Vorkosigan, and you can put all those in front of Sword of Kaigen. You can place bets right here. There's no better spot. I'm curious to see what the bets are.
Okay, what was the Prince one you mentioned again?
Oh, it was Prince of Nothing. So Darkness That Comes Before. The series name is Prince of Nothing, which is Baker.
Gotcha.
Evie's pretty. Are you saying stars or out of 10?
Because Jake's is out of 10, so we have to remember his very specific.
And you're trying to be specific, so I with decimals. You're going 4.0. Let's get 2 sig figs here, folks. 2 sig figs.
How did that start?
Well, I was putting in my Goodreads ratings, and I was like, well, I feel like this book also deserves 5 stars, but I don't want to say I like it as much as Way of Kings, so I'm going to start doing decimals.
All right, 7.4, and Evie is saying 4 out of 5.
Okay, can we get an out of 10? You rate out of 100, Evie. Why are you? Come on, let's.
Very specific, right?
All right, 8.2. Okay, 8.2. That'd be a good book. 8.2, very good score.
That is fair.
Paul Ryan 7.4. Okay. That's like 7.4. Solid book.
Yeah. I'm pretty traditional in I go in 0.25s. So
yeah,
that's typically how I go.
This is what I find funny. Okay. People are like, oh, no, I could never do more precise than a half star. And then I see on Goodreads, 4.5 rounded down. And it's like, and Kyle is like 4.5 rounds up. And they're like, yeah, but this is on the lower half of 4.5. I'm like, so you can differentiate more.
So this actually happened to me with Kyle.
Will of the Many.
Will of the Many. Yeah, because I gave it a 4.5, but I only gave it the 4-star because, first of all, it irks me on Goodreads that you can't do half stars because that's literally what I would have given it. I would have given it a 4.5. But there is something that happens at the end of Will of the Many that bothered me to the point where I was like, I'm not rounding this up because. So
really, it's a 4.4 that you just had to.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is like logically, to me, it is a 4.5. It's just that Goodreads mathematically won't let me give it a 4.5.
So it's just, people will tell me my decimals are crazy, and then they'll be like, yeah, this was a 3.5, but on the high enough side of a 3.5 that can round up, but like on the lower side of the 3.5s that round up. I'm like, you just did decimals with extra steps.
Oh, wow. Gave Will the Many 2 stars.
Yeah, this is Ryan. He's been hot taking all over the place. Kyle said something hilarious. I think Tanner or someone on Jimmy's Discord was reading Will the Many, and they were struggling. Can I swear here? Kyle swore, and I need to quote him.
Go ahead.
He wrote on Discord in response to someone being, I'm struggling with Will the Many. He wrote, how about you build a bridge and get the fuck over it?
That sounds like how. Yeah. That's funny though.
No, I want to see your prediction. I'm not gonna change the rating I give the book because of your prediction. Like, if you're like, he's not gonna like it, I'm not gonna go in there and I'm like, but I'm not like, I want to put your money where your mouth is. Come on.
Right. I have no ideas. I haven't read it, so she missed that, but that is amazing. Apparently.
Come on, Matthew. What's the score gonna be? I feel like if he's gonna be cagey about it, it has to be really high or really low. So this better be like higher than a 9.3 or lower than like a 4.1.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what you end up coming up with.
Come on, Matthew. I'm thinking 3.7. Okay.
Very specific.
That would be very disappointing.
Yeah.
I hope it's not that. I'm going to take the over on 3.7.
I think that's fair.
I don't dislike a lot of books. I read like...
I'm the same typically.
Because I'm good at finding books that I
like.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if I went into a bookstore and just like read a random fiction or fantasy book, knowing nothing about it, my average score would be like pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rare for me to think like, oh, I'm going to like that book and give it a 3.7. That maybe happens like once or twice a year. So that would be...
Yeah. I'm generally like that too, even though I go in blind to a lot of books. I find things to like about the book that I've read. And I feel like more often than not, that will offset a lot of the negative opinions that I have, unless there is just overwhelming in which I cannot get behind a book, which I had very recently, which I was very upset about. And it just wasn't a fun experience for me. But for the most part, I generally do enjoy the things that I read. What was your rating for...
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I didn't like the... I didn't finish it, so I didn't give it a rating.
The Iliad is not something that I... Also, first of all, I think it depends on which translation you read.
I tried a couple.
So Emily Wilson's, I think, is the strongest translation by far. Okay. And I still think that there are large swaths of that book, like specifically the catalog of ships, that I'm like, no one cares.
I complained about that. And then someone's like, oh, don't worry. There's a bunch of stuff. It's not like that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. None of the others are as egregious to this. But I brought up this to someone while I was complaining about the Iliad. And it's the part, I'm spoiling the Iliad. It came out how long ago?
About
spoilers are clear for the Iliad.
7,000 years ago, yes.
So it's the part where, Agamemnon is like, they're losing. And they're like, we need to go get Achilles to fight for us. I mean, that's the entire book. But one of those sections. Yes. And he's like, lists out all these things that he will give him. Like, I will give him 6 slaves, 2 goats, a chariot, a nice summer retreat in the woodland hills. Yeah. And he lists out all these things to, I think, Odysseus, and is like, go tell Achilles that I will give him all these things, and the goats will be healthy and strong. And then it's not like, and then Odysseus went and told Achilles like he would want the entire list. It's then like, and then Odysseus told Achilles that Agamemnon will give you, and they list out the entire list again. And I'm like,
yeah,
why? And I know the reason is why is because it's supposed to be memorized, right? Like it's supposed to be spoken aloud.
Matthew kind of has the thing here that it's an oral performance, like it's sung. It's actually it's supposed to have been sung. It's not even spoken. So I feel like it's meant to be a reminder.
Hey, Bookborn, you've come up twice on videos that we need you to do because I'm not going to put in the effort for, but involves stats and numbers. Hi.
So we will message you about that after.
Yeah, we're recruiting you.
Yeah, but it's meant to just remind the audience, whereas like, because they don't have the text, they didn't put the text in front of them.
I'm fine with that. This is the bit where it bothers. This is actually the part where I'm like, come on, guys, because I feel like in the comments, people want to have it both ways.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I read it as a book and didn't like it.
Yeah.
And they want to be like, but the book is like one of the best books ever. And then I'm like, oh, here are the reasons I didn't like it. And they're like, well, it's not intended to work as a book. So it's not one of the best books ever. Then.
See, that's
because you're
fair.
just like, all the things that make it suck as a book, yeah, those are true. You have to understand it's not true at all. It's like, okay, well, I didn't see it performed in a theater.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's a bad play, or if someone recited it orally, it might be cool, but I read it as a book.
Yeah.
And so that's how I'm judging it.
See, I feel like this is where Gilgamesh is different, and that Gilgamesh was intentionally written down, whereas the Iliad and Odyssey ended up being written down as a way to teach people Latin and Greek. And it's just different, where I'm like, Gilgamesh was meant to be read, and it's written in a way that it's meant to be read, whereas the Iliad and the Odyssey, I do think with how certain translations have come about, are very readable, but they're meant to be performed. It's very different in their nature.
The most interesting things about the Iliad was just like the fact that it was written by someone so far ago. It kind of gives you a bit of a lens on how they thought about people.
Yeah,
the same way, like, you know, if someone in 2,000 years read Dresden, it'd be like, interesting. This is how they thought about cities, whatever. Or Jim Butcher did specifically. But like the actual story and words, I kept falling asleep. So oops. So Bookborn, these are the two ideas. Okay. Idea one, all the differences between the original Wind and Truth prologue and the one that just came out. I feel like you're making it already. This one was like, I was like, I could make that video. And then I was like, Hillary's probably going to do it. And she's just going to do it better than I am anyway. So if you're not, now you can. Oh, let's hear the reaction to that.
We think this will be great for you. Cosmere connections.
Yeah, I'm going to guess the first message, she's about to be like, hi, saw this live, and it's a perfect way for me to avoid what I should be doing.
There you go.
And there it's dying. Yeah. Well, she's doing the recap, so can't add another thing. Well,
see, here's the thing. We don't want to do this, but we feel it should be done. And we know
and the problem is you'll do it eventually. Yeah. And you'll do it better than I will. So if I make it, it will become redundant when you make your version. So I want you to know that, like, once if I make this and I come out with this video and then you do it, I will send a glowing bald assassin after you.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we will support you in making this
so
video.
Just if you start working on it, please let me know, because then I'll stop, because your version will be better. Anyways, that was the lower effort of the two of the two videos.
Yes. So I don't know if you hear my cat in the background, by the way, but he is
people like cats. They're okay if the cat yells
Josh just walked by and gave such an eye roll.
They're okay if the cat yells at us. The cat has the right to yell at us.
I mean, occasionally, yeah. He did just get fed, so he's being real obnoxious right now.
So the other idea is, do people actually not like endings? And it's, if you look at the average ratings,
the data. We need the data.
You need the average ratings of books, but you only include people who have read the entire series. I have no idea if this is actually viable. I wonder if ChatGPT could do it. ChatGPT 4. If you could just tell it, like, maybe. I want the rating of people on Goodreads, but like, I only want the Eye of the World ratings for people who have read
completed
all the other Wheel of Time books. And I want to know if you filter out early books in every series by only people who have completed the series, what book in series tends to be the most popular.
So Kyle and I can't contribute to that.
Look, we just...
There we go. Yeah. See, we're all on the same wavelength here. And she's just the one that's actually putting in the work, and we're just saying...
Her attempt of trying is putting in a bunch of work. My version of trying is like, hey, Bookborn,
would you like to do this thing? This is why I commented on her last video. It's like, Bookborn has a new video. Here's the data. And I'm like, it's just always it. I just know she's going to have the data for me.
Working on it because of the Song of Ice and Fire. That makes sense.
I mean, what haven't you been working on because of the Song of Ice and Fire lately? Let's be real.
See,
So people telling me I shouldn't read it because gotcha.
My undertaking is just I want it for all the series.
I feel like this could also be tangentially manipulative, but I will accept nice.
I'm actually just trying to offload work. So
Right?
it's a little bit of a generous interpretation of this. But
yeah, I mean, it's fine. I'll take it. I mean, I'm happy though that we did get to vocalize those ideas to her. And now that we won't have to send her this and she won't have to watch the whole thing from start to finish. She just knows now what it is that we want her to do. If there are more than 5 books, yeah. I don't know. I tend to keep them pretty straight in my head, I feel like.
It depends on the series.
Yeah, it can.
Like, now that's unfair because I read it too long ago. I was about to be like, I have no goddamn clue what happened in Dance with Dragons. I have no idea what happens in each book of The Witcher.
That's fair.
Like, I'm like, there were the short stories. Yeah. One of the one where this happens the most is Wheel of Time. I have the magical ability to remember what happened in each Wheel of Time book. Don't know.
Oh, really?
Why. Yeah.
It's funny because the plot is the same in so many of them.
But I can remember what happened in each one. If you name a thing that happens in the Wheel of Time, I can be like, book 7.
I'm that way about Harry Potter. Like, that's how I am with Harry Potter. Very specific.
I can't differentiate the Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny. That's all one. The series isn't one book. Ship of Magic, I know where it ends in every plot line, so then I can work backwards. If you give me an event, be like, this happened after that.
Sure.
But Mad Ship, there's one plot line. Okay, can I remember? But even when I know where it ends, I just can't do it. Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny are one massive, brilliantly glorious book.
Sure.
Malaz and I don't remember what happened at all. Just kidding. Jokes. Dresden I can do because I've read it a bajillion times because it's I'm in a reading slump comfort read.
Sure.
That
has become ACOTAR for me. That is my reading slump series that always brings me joy.
I can do it for most series.
Yeah, I can definitely do it for Stormlight. That's something that I have
easily.
Very definitive memories of each book.
Almost like I've read Words of Radiance 8 times. I better be able to remember what's in that.
Almost, right?
Yeah. But hey, I've only read Oathbringer a measly. Oh wait, actually, I just did it on audio again. I've only read Oathbringer a measly 6 times. So
6. I'll take it.
And Rhythm of War only once.
I have read all of them only once, but
imagine hating the Stormlight Archive. Couldn't be me.
So here's my thing. I really didn't love The Way of Kings, and I took a break of about 8 months between book 1 and book 2, and I inhaled Words of Radiance. I loved it, and then I binged the last 3 back to back, which I really enjoyed because so much of the story was fresh in my brain. Because
I don't need the recap. So I'll have you know, I have a creme posting post. Where it's a Star Wars The Clone Wars meme. There's a scene, there was the new season coming out where Anakin says, I don't have such weaknesses. And it was me when I see everyone else looking for Stormlight recaps before Rhythm of War comes out. And I was just like, I don't have such weaknesses.
There you go. I will contest this forever because that book, I think, could have been 200 pages shorter and would have been substantially better. And that is the only book in that series that I feel that way about, because I don't mind the lengths of the other books, but I feel like at that point, in certain moments in Way of Kings, it drags. But that's
I mean, it's a take I've heard from others, not you, that like Words of Radiance is like substantially better than The Way of Kings.
So much better.
I've read both 8 times. Haven't been able to figure it out a single time. Every time I'm like, maybe this time I'll figure out why Way of Kings is like.
The thing for me that is the definitive reason is that first of all, I don't feel that way about Feast.
No, you like those people.
Yes, but that's fine. I am not like that with Feast. But my thing is that I really dislike Shallan in Way of Kings to the point that I found reading her POV to be quite arduous. Like, I don't think she's funny. So her humor for me for that whole book was so grating, and she's not smart. I was like, just stop telling her that she's smart. And I did such a 180 on her character in Words of Radiance that for me substantially enriched my enjoyment of that book. And because it's her book, I found that I was really engrossed in her story, and it just overall completely changed my experience going forward because she becomes such a even more of a central figure because of her connections to other characters.
She's not funny, and she's not
No, she's
particularly
not.
smart. She's a disaster though, and I like
She
reading about
is.
her in Way of Kings. And I think every
Shocking.
time I reread Way of Kings, I'm specifically the two things everyone rereads of Way of Kings that keep getting better is the flashbacks. They're so good, and the Shalon chapters. Goodbye, Derry.
Bye, Derry. Ryan is just coming in with all the hot takes today. Doesn't like Will the Many, doesn't like Feast. Strong takes, strong opinions. I mean, I don't know. I am curious to see, because initially when I read Wave Kings the first time, I was like, this is a book I will never reread. And now that I have read through the other 3 books and I loved them, I am curious to reread it and see if it does click with me more. Like Kaladin is like my least favorite character of the main bunch. So
as of now, not when you read it, Shalon was.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Retroactively, he has become my least favorite because I feel like he just doesn't change at all. And that for me is where I really struggle with his character. Whereas I feel like everyone else is advancing in some way, shape, or form, be it good or bad. I feel like Kaladin, for the most part, has just sort of stayed the same. So I'm hoping.
Yeah, I mean, he changes a good amount. I think he has the most development in Way of Kings, but I think he kind of he has the most of his development front loaded because book 1 is his book, probably.
See, I get this. And it's not that it's depression related, because I get that very, very much because I'm someone that has lived with depression. So it's just not that for me. It's just that I feel like
I think
it's just separate.
I think aside from depression, I think he has a distinct arc in all 4 books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't connect with Kaladin the way that other people do. But it's okay because I have the whole Colin family and I love them very much.
I'm actually getting close to the point where I'm starting to have crazy takes on the flashbacks. Like, I'm starting to be like, are the flashbacks better? Like the best parts of the book. Like every time I read, I like them more. I haven't really read. I don't think that's going to happen with Rhythm of War because the Rhythm of War flashbacks are just like clearly the weakest of the 4. But I'm straight up like, there's a Shalon flashback chapter in Words of Radiance, and on my last reread, I'm like, this might be my favorite chapter in this book. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of really bloody good chapters in that book.
They're so good. Oh,
but they are
so good in that book.
And then there's one in Way of Kings. There's Kaladin flashback, and I'm like,
I liked his flashbacks
this
quite
might
a bit.
be my favorite.
I actually was messaging Bookborn about these flashbacks specifically because I got really teary with one of them with his brother, and I thought it was very, very well written. So it's not that I didn't love. It's like I just didn't love Way of Kings, and I loved Words of Radiance and Oathbringer specifically.
I'll never get it. I get the people who just don't like the series generally. I've tried on multiple rereads to be like, okay, put your head into someone who thinks Way of Kings is mid and Words of Radiance is amazing. And I just can't do it. I tried. I'm sorry. I've tried.
That's fine, honestly.
And I usually
it works for you. Just roll with it.
Usually I can, like, when someone has an opinion on books, I can be like, okay, look at it from the other perspective. Come up with and I just can't. I'm sorry. I tried.
Bye, Abie.
Goodbye, Abie. We'll see if you're right about Titus Grown. Who knows? Maybe I'll like it way more and you'll be like happy about that. As long as now if I like it. Now what if I give it an 8.1? She said 8.2. I mean, she'll be like, you could have just made me right.
Right? I'm like, I couldn't hear Abie saying that. Okay, it is 10:30 where I am too, so I am going to wrap this up.
Yeah,
but
I'm hungry. I want to go make dinner.
Tell all the people of the internet and YouTube what your channel is, Jake, and where they can find you by your name.
So, have you noticed that I've been rambling about books for like 2.5 hours? I post videos. I sometimes remember to post monthly wrap-ups. And then I'll usually post like one non-wrap-up video a month where I ramble about random nonsense. And I start the video and I'm like, this is going to be an 11-minute video. And then it's a 39-minute video.
Yep.
If I've talked about like all the books that I like basically here, but if you want to see videos from someone who's a fan of K, Hobb, Sanderson, Butcher, Bujol, Liu, Rockio, or other Butcher. I said Butcher already. Whatever. Other people. Lots of fantasy and sci-fi series. It's my name. I didn't get creative. I don't even know. That is Benjamin just posted. That's my best video. The Where to Start Guy Gabriel K video.
Banger video. That's right.
It's
I like
very
your picture, Benjamin, with your cat.
yes. It's a very good cat. Good work. And then I have some videos that are much less good, like where I tier rank the Targaryen monarch, but that one got 100 and something thousand views. So
Did it really?
yeah, it has more views than the rest of my channel combined, I think.
I'm gonna have to go look at it because I think
Don't
maybe
watch
I
it.
did
It has
watch
enough
it.
views. No,
I
don't.
think I did watch it.
Stop. Let's see what it's up to. 125,000.
Oh, geez.
Whatever. Is it my lowest percent liked? That's probably. Oh, nope. Gideon the Ninth, sad review. 1-star review. 85% liked.
Ooh, there you
People
go.
couldn't handle the heat. I actually think I was incredibly reasonable in that
I think
review,
that's
by
fair.
the way. But I feel like that wasn't. I don't remember that being that low. I feel like it actually. I remember posting it and being like, "Can I look at the stats for this?" I feel like when I posted it, it was like, "Oh, people are okay with this because I was reasonable." Did someone make
Yeah.
like? Can you see a
I think
graph
I
of likes and
scared
dislikes?
Bookborn off with my talk of Kaladin.
She's mad at you. She's actually you're a knock on your
Yeah.
door.
I'm in the
You
doghouse now.
knocked 4 times. Who got that reference?
I'm sorry if our friendship is ruined, Bookborn. Oh, she's still here. I don't know if I'm forgiven yet. We'll find out. But
Thank you for having me on. I know, at first
I
you
just had nothing to offer.
your mail.
You are welcome anytime. We do need to schedule our
Yes.
Game of Thrones thing because I remembered, and we're going to talk about it in just a second. But thank you all so much for coming to hang out with us on your Friday night. I appreciate it so much. If you would like to help support the channel, you can help by maybe joining our Patreon. You can talk to us about the book that we're going to be reading, which I already talked about a little bit, is The Grace of Kings, which is going to be really exciting. And it's just a cool place to come hang out in our Discord. You can come hang out and chat with Evie and I. And if you
That's me at the end of every stream, Evie. I can't stop. I have a problem.
There you go. Right?
I'm working on that.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. If you're watching us on a recap, let us know what you've been reading and watching and enjoying lately, because it's always fun to spread the love with all the things that you enjoy.
Comment. If you made it this far, comment, uncrown the Lord of Emperors awaits you now.
All right, everybody. Have a wonderful night. I'll see you next time.
That should be my outro.